Hello and welcome to Big Dumb Movie, where we discuss movies of the big dumb variety. I'm your host Corey, and I'm joined with many co-hosts today. I have with me my longtime childhood friend Jonathan.
Hey guys.
And Josh, the review dude, is joining us again.
Yeah, and we didn't re-record this because I fucked up. This is our second take.
Josh, you scared the shit out of me.
I'm so sorry.
Catch up, Corey.
Alright, I lost my place, but...
Steve!
Yes! I'm having deja vu all over again.
Yeah, so we're recording this again. Fortunately, the first one wasn't too long, so we didn't lose a lot of data.
Right.
Anyway, we're here to talk about Batman Returns, which is a Tim Burton film. And Tim Burton is a man that has had a long and interesting career. He's been making movies as long as I can remember. In fact, the first movie I ever saw in theaters was the '89 Batman, so he's kind of been with me my whole life. But before we praise him, I wanted to discuss maybe his lesser films, which leads me to my question for you guys. Starting with you, Jonathan. What is your least favorite Tim Burton movie?
I gotta go with Corpse Bride, and I don't even think it has to do with Tim Burton now that I'm thinking about it. It's probably more of a Johnny Depp thing. Like, I was really over Johnny Depp and the whole, like, Pirates of the Caribbean thing all going on all at the same time, that whole mid-2000 thing, and it really turned me off from this movie.
Okay, well, I tend to agree with you about the Johnny Depp thing because, like, he had a very... He had interesting movies, it seemed like, when he first started, like, in the 90s. He was doing, like Edward Scissorhands and Dead Man, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Benny and June. Like, during the 90s, he had, like, some pretty, like, fascinating films. And it was around the time of that film, I think, where he started just doing a bunch of shit. And, yeah, it seemed like it kind of kicked off from Pirates.
He was kind of looking for a paycheck around that era.
Does
you know?
nobody
But then there
have
were other
memories of Crybaby?
Oh, Crybaby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were other ones that were like amazing, you know, like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Like, I really enjoyed that movie, and I can't even imagine what kind of actor it would have taken for him to play that character, you know, and like what he could do to get into that role.
I think that's the most offensive part about his garbage roles, is knowing what he's capable of at that other end of the spectrum, you know?
Hey, I fell asleep during Transcendence, sir.
No, that was not a good movie.
Steve, what's your least favorite Tim Burton film?
I've decided to go with Big Fish, just because even though I find the film visually interesting, I find it otherwise kind of flaccid and boring. But we've discussed Alice in Wonderland as well, which I think I don't feel quite as strongly negatively about as some of the other guests, but generally I would agree it was not a good attempt. The
thing about Big Fish is I think the takeaway from it is, like, it's okay to lie. I don't really understand the message of Big Fish.
It's like the content of the story is more important than whether or not it was true.
Yeah.
It's like,
What's going on there?
I've seen Big Fish once. It's like, I have no need to go back and ever rewatch it.
Yeah.
But, like, it was fine. I didn't hate it. Not as much as I, like, absolutely hated Alice in Wonderland. Like, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory used to be my most hated Tim Burton film until Alice in Wonderland came out.
See, I think Corey feels similar to you about that, but I kind of like his version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
I really enjoyed that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's just a, you know, new thing in a new time.
I honestly think it was a
like
lot
weird
closer to what Dahl wanted for that story than what they did with Gene Wilder.
See, I know your reasoning, Steve. I know that you don't like the original, which is a fucking classic.
Yeah. Well, it's less that I wouldn't quite say that I don't like it. I've just never been able to enjoy it on the same level as a lot of my contemporaries have. Yeah.
You have contemporaries. That's cool.
Yeah, you know, the 102-year-olds.
Yeah, they're
grumpy old vault keepers.
Did he direct the Alice in Wonderland sequel?
No.
Oh, yeah.
So my least favorite is a film that has been forgotten about in the annals of time. The Planet of the Apes remake with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, it was stupid.
I forgot that existed.
A lot of people do, because there's new good Planet of the Apes movies.
there's definitely new Planet of the Apes movies.
You don't like them?
I don't hate them. I think the production's impressive. And I would not say that they're bad movies. Those are other ones that I just like. I go in to see them and I'm like, I didn't dislike that, but I also just wasn't like way into it. Yeah.
I saw the first one. I didn't catch the sequels.
The last one I saw was the most War of the Planet of the Apes? Was that the one that was out like 3-4 years ago?
Yeah. Somewhere around 4 or 5, actually. 4, I think, yes. But yeah, War of the Planet of the Apes, I liked it.
It was all right, yeah.
I think the middle one.
They're watchable.
Yeah, I'd agree with you about that.
Definitely better than the Mark Wahlberg one.
Top tier Tim Burton is like Beetlejuice, though.
Oh, yeah.
Beetlejuice. What other good ones does he got?
Some of his shorts are brilliant. There's one he did years before he was famous called Vincent, about it's claymation. It's about a kid who believes he's Vincent Price. It's fucking amazing. I love it. Frankenweenie. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one.
Well, there's
really funny.
There's the newer one and there's the short.
Yeah, the original short's the one I...
Apparently, the Frankenweenie movie is very good, but I've never seen it, so...
It was enjoyable.
I have a soft spot for Sweeney Todd.
Me too,
yeah.
I'm not generally a huge musicals person, but that one stands out for me. I think he did a great job with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my, 10 musicals that I like, for sure.
Right.
Everybody shits on that one. I don't get it.
Neither do I, frankly. I think most people have no clue how hard it is to produce a musical on film. It's really a massive thing, and I thought it came out quite well.
Yeah. It has the kind of old school Tim Burton
Tell
aesthetic.
that to Russell Crowe, okay?
we're making Les Mis jokes again here.
Look, I prefer Les Mis as a drama, and that's gotten me into fights with people, so...
Now, Josh, before we talk about Batman Returns, I know that you've recently watched the 89 Batman as well. So
Yes, sir.
maybe you can give us a short recap of the first movie to catch our listeners and us up to date.
Okay, so Batman 89 opens. Batman's already been operating for some disclosed amount of time in Gotham.
Which I love. That's one of my favorite things about that movie, is that it doesn't show him being set up to become Batman. He just is.
He just is. He's established. This is still pre-Bat Signal, though. And at first he's really just fighting the mob and petty crime, and doesn't really come across his first supervillain until the Joker, played by Jack Nicholson, who, with the help of music by Prince, wreaks havoc on Gotham.
Now, real quick, Jonathan and Steve, the Joker, the Jack Nicholson Joker, what do you guys think?
Best Joker of all time.
Oh, that's your favorite? He's really good.
He just has such a cynical, natural, beingness about him. He just had a perfect, fit for that role.
Yeah, he's got some very good quotes too.
If he wasn't used as Joker in the original Batman, I could have seen him being Two-Face in Batman Forever.
Willem Dafoe was almost cast as Joker.
Oh, he'd be good.
Yeah, that would have been a good one.
Yeah, he could have.
He's got the physique for a Joker. He's got that skinny man look,
Ugly as shit.
Well, I mean, if you're going on the basis of appearance, I don't know if you guys know what he looks like, but I think it was Dwight Yoakam, the country singer, who, in the late 80s, looked pretty much exactly like the way they were drawing Batman in the comics. It would not have been a good casting choice.
How do we always talk about Dwight Yoakam?
Right? Well, because, Guitars and Cadillacs, Terminator 2, so, but, no,
Steve, what do you think of him? Nicholson.
I've always really liked him and the part. From a character perspective, I do kind of prefer the way Nolan and Heath Ledger played him.
Okay.
For the later franchise, but Burton's version I do really like. I think he's really, really interesting from a character development perspective, because that approach to Joker is really equal parts 1980s comic book Joker plus 1960s TV Joker plus what Burton wanted Joker to be. And it's a really interesting amalgamation. It's probably not the way I would have chosen to do the character, but I love that film, and it's still great.
Yeah, it's very inspired from Cesar Romero, definitely.
Yeah, which is interesting, because I think otherwise Burton really tried to distance himself from the series, including with the characters in Returns, which I'll address when we get there.
Go on, Josh. So where does that lead us in the original Batman?
Side note, like, I guess I'm in the minority. I'm more of a Heath Ledger person. I think Nicholson is a little too Nicholson.
Yeah.
He's a little like his character from The Shining in parts. But essentially, he goes on to do a bunch of just wacky schemes until ultimately they throw him off a fucking roof.
They do, don't they? I love that.
That's been one of my few issues with the Batman franchise in general, is they have a tendency to kill the villain at the end of the movie. There's never there's no Arkham, really. Except for maybe Scarecrow in Nolan's franchise. There's very rarely ever an opportunity to bring that person back. Although there was a thing with Catwoman, which we'll talk about when we get there.
Take it from somebody that just did a double feature of Batman and Batman Returns.
Uh-oh.
Michael Keaton's Batman in the original is way less murdery. He doesn't.
He's pretty fucking murdery, dude.
Yeah, well, he is.
Doesn't he drop a bomb inside of Joker's plant, and he just fucking blows everyone that's working in there?
Well, yeah, he doesn't become really murdery until the climax. In Batman Returns, he's just a full-blown psychopath, all the way through.
Burton addresses that a little bit in his commentary for the film, and he continues to state that he never has understood why anyone feels that way. That he really does not think that they went that extreme with the character, and his perspective on the character was never that. I have to say, I'm not sure I really can get quite on board with it either. There's the one scene toward, 2/3 of the way through or so, where he packs the explosive onto the clown and throws him down the sewer. But even then, you never see the guy die. You can't really be certain the explosion killed him. He could have lived.
That sounds like a quote from Zack Snyder. Did you guys hear his defense on Batman murdering people?
What'd he say?
He was like, "Oh no, I never understood that shit. You try to come at me with that shit, I say go the fuck on." It sounds like a child. You know what I mean? It's just a bunch of swear words.
I think Burton's more sincere about it than Snyder. I think Snyder knew exactly what he was doing and just doesn't want to be held accountable for it.
Release the Snyder Cut, people. No, I'm just kidding. Don't.
The Schneider Cut.
Oh, surf.
There's an argument for Watchmen. There is an argument for Watchmen.
I love Watchmen.
Yeah.
I love Watchmen.
Me too.
And I love 300 too.
Yeah, you know what? I also did. Look, you can knock the guy for the shit he's done. He has done some shit, but he's made some pretty good choices in some other places.
But Batman versus Superman sucked.
No, it was horrible.
All right, going back to Batman Returns.
Let's get back on with Tim Burton. Now, he did the first Batman like Josh described. Thank you. When it came to do the sequel, didn't he decline originally, Steve?
Yeah, he wasn't initially interested, and a large part of the reason why, well, he does mention in the commentary, and this is something a lot of them say, is once you're done filming a movie like that, the last thing in the world you want to think about immediately after is doing another one. But another part of it was that Warner's originally wanted this to be a direct sequel to the first film, and Burton went in stating, I'm not going to do that. I won't. If this is in any way a direct sequel to the first one, you can absolutely count me as not being interested.
Now, by direct sequel, you mean picking up the continuity of having Vicky Vale and having just killed the Joker? Like what?
Yeah, exactly. Or like where this is kind of a next step from that. He very much wanted this to be viewed as another...
He wanted to go the Bond route.
Well, a little bit, I think. But, I mean, the way he describes it himself, and not verbatim necessarily, but more or less in his own words, was he wanted this to be another issue. He wanted it to be another chapter. It's like, it's the same universe. It's the same main character. We're not removing that first story from canon, but this is not an extension of that first one. They're like two separate graphic novels. They're mutually exclusive of each other and otherwise have really no connection. The only connection at all are a couple of moments like where Bruce references Alfred letting Vicky into the Batcave. There's a moment where he and Selina... I
like that moment.
Me too. There's a moment where he and Selina are talking when they have their date in his house, where he's describing he dated a Vicky, and she's got some... I always forget the line immediately after I've seen it, but she's got some snide line about she must have been a stewardess or something. Yeah.
That is pretty good. Speaking of Vicky, there's a woman that was originally going to play Vicky in the first movie.
Yeah.
Was slated to, Sean Young.
Sean Young.
Now, I think you know some info about her involvement with the Batman franchise, right?
Yeah, no, some of this story came directly from Tim Burton. So some of the details may have gotten embellished over the years, but I'm sure that this is at least mostly true. Sean Young got cast to play Vicky Vale in the first film and then fell off a horse and broke her collarbone. Couldn't take the part. So they cast Kim Basinger after they considered some other people. And Sean Young's career had a peak during the mid and late 80s. She'd played Rachel in Blade Runner. But that's something that's looked at now as having been a much bigger deal than it was at the time. People forget that Blade Runner was not liked when it was released. It bombed at the box office. Nobody cared about it.
Much like its sequel. Right.
So, exactly, which is another tragedy. Sean Young was desperate and she really wanted to be in this film. And, they initially cast Annette Bening to play Catwoman, and then she ended up having to back out because she got pregnant. And I'm not really sure whether the Sean Young saga happened before they announced that they'd cast Bening or after it was announced that Bening had backed out. But Sean Young apparently would show up at the Warner Brothers lot where Burton was keeping an office at the time looking for him. And she would just come in and rant and rave and start accosting him. She had kind of a reputation as being a little difficult and crazy. And it got to the point where he was telling security and his staff, like, A, don't let her on the lot. And B, if she somehow manages to get on the lot, you are under no circumstances allowed to tell her where I am. And she showed up at least once, if not more than once, wearing a homemade Catwoman costume.
Yes.
She apparently would just rant and rave and go crazy. She kept getting on the lot somehow, I guess because security didn't want to turn away a famous person. And it got to the point where Burton had some of his staff carrying around walkie-talkies so that if they got word she was on the lot, that they could warn him and let him know where she was so that he could avoid any contact with her.
How else are you supposed to get a part, man?
Right? I mean, it's not like you have an agent.
Yeah, right?
Well, she also went on the Joan Rivers show.
Yeah.
In her homemade Catwoman costume. And like publicly called out Tim Burton.
Right.
And was like,
I have a message for the director of Batman 2. How dare you not make time to see the Catwoman, not even so much as granting me a meeting. How very rude of you. After all, I was in the original Batman cast. How dare you not even return the Catwoman's phone calls. I don't make phone calls very often, and after all, business is business, and doing good business means that you return your phone calls. It's a pretty simple formula, Timmy. How dare you treat the Catwoman so badly? Have I ever been anything except professional with you? Have I badmouthed you? Did I show up late for rehearsals or something? I even jumped up on a horse I was scared to death of because...
You showing up at a backlot in a homemade Catwoman costume and ranting at people is definitely the right way to approach that situation. And I honestly think even if he'd been willing to consider her for the part otherwise, the fact that she had a reputation for being difficult and crazy anyway and then did this pretty much guaranteed you're not going to get that part.
All right, excuse me, guys. I'm going to go grab my Spider-Man costume and I'm going to fly out to the Disney lot.
Right. But the number of people, I actually made a note of this so I'd remember at least some of the names. The number of people they considered for that part is unbelievable. I mean, they basically really went from Bening to Michelle Pfeiffer. Lorraine Bracco. People mostly know her as having been Tony's psychiatrist on The Sopranos. She was also the female lead in Hackers.
Hackers, yeah.
She was considered and eventually backed out to do a movie called Medicine Man with Sean Connery that was supposed to be a big deal and ended up being a huge flop. Gina Davis was considered and backed out to do League of Their Own. Jodie Foster was considered and backed out to do a movie called Little Man Tate that nobody ended up seeing.
Side note, Gina Davis would have been an awful job.
Yeah, exactly. Some of these are terrible picks.
Awful.
Sigourney Weaver was considered. Madonna, Cher, Demi Moore. I mean,
they were just throwing fucking names at the wall, huh?
And exactly. And Susan Sarandon and that Josh, absolutely. That's exactly what I was pretty much going to say. Is they were really just like, let's look at a list of every working actress roughly the right age and consider them. Yeah. Even Madonna and Cher. And not only did Pfeiffer. Tim Burton didn't know who she was. I mean, he was kind of vaguely aware she was a person who existed and was an actress, but he had no idea what she'd been in.
Not a Scarface fan?
No, I guess he wasn't really, he didn't remember, wasn't aware. He always said that at the point they first suggested her to him, he really knew nothing about her career. She'd been in a fairly popular movie in the mid-'80s with Matthew Broderick called Lady Hawk. I guess they showed him clips of a couple of her scenes and had her come in for one audition. And he was just like, she's it. Let's take her. When they were looking for Benning's replacement. It's a whole, we can talk about that in a minute, but it's a whole similar story with Max Schreck and with casting for Penguin.
Well, I'm glad they went with Michelle Pfeiffer.
I think everyone
She's
is.
the right amount of fucked up to play that role.
She killed it, yeah.
She did great.
The one thing Burton mentions constantly in his commentary is that Michelle Pfeiffer and Penguin. Danny, thank you. The two of them seem to pretty much just click automatically to what he wanted for those characters and understood their parts so well that he gave both of them virtually zero direction during the course of the film. It was basically just, here's a few little suggestions, otherwise do what you want. And an
actor's dream.
Right, exactly.
I feel like it shows.
Right, 100%, Josh. Yeah, absolutely. And that was what he kind of evolves to. If you listen to his commentary on the film, he constantly picks out these moments, the two of them in Penguin's office with the birdcage, or Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael
weird.
at the masquerade party. Were just the group of them. It's one of very few comic book movies where all the actors were actors and they were all there to act. Like they played this like. One of the things he makes a point of mentioning is that at this point in history, most people didn't take comic book material seriously. And he lucked out and found this group of actors who were willing to just kind of forget that any of it had ever been a comic book to begin with.
It's definitely his own thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Burton's own thing. And for what it is, I really like it. In a lot of other cases, I might complain, but I like it here.
No, absolutely. I usually bemoan any change from the source material, but he made this so much it's his own. And DC, to their credit, has done such a good job of maintaining Batman on film as being kind of distinct from the comic books that, like, I think it really works.
You're right. It's kind of always been the case.
Right.
Let's talk about the movie itself, Batman Returns. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, the beginning of this movie, I mean, this is one of the many parts that I love about it. We get to see the Cobblepot estate. And Jonathan, why don't you tell us about the beginning scene of this in the Cobblepot estate?
Yeah, so it just like it starts out with the Cobblepots. They find out that they have a little boy, or whatever you want to call it, born, and the dad like runs in, he hears all the screams.
Lord Pee Wee Herman.
Yes,
right.
Pee Wee and Simone, actually, from Pee Wee's Big Adventure, are the parents.
I can't get like his little mustache out of my mind. He's standing there with his like little monocle,
his little
and
pencil
his little
mustache.
Yeah. So, anyways, then like time goes by. They've got this child locked up in the cage in their house, eats the cat, stuff like that, and they just decide that they need to do something about this shitty, hideous kid. And so, of all things, they wrap it up and throw it in the river that heads to the sewer.
Yes. Oh man, it's so good. The imagery of the baby in the cage, like shaking the bars, like the face and the body are obscured, but you see the little hands
Grabbing the cat.
and then it just grabs the cat and eats it.
I was about to say, I just had a realization that's actually like foreshadowing of him and Catwoman.
Yes.
Yeah.
They
He got his first taste of pussy.
Yes.
They wanted to cast Burgess Meredith to play the father, and he got so sick leading up to filming he couldn't do it. So Burton decided to use Paul and Simone. I can't remember that actress's name, but
That would have been apt because he was the Penguin in the '66 Batman series.
yeah, exactly. And then to Jonathan's point, he's got the cigar or the cigarette holder. Obviously a reference to a frequent depiction of Penguin in the comics with the cigarette holder. And later in the film where Max is trying to convince him to run for mayor, he puts a cigarette holder in Oswald's mouth and says, "Reclaim your birthright."
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty subtle, and I like it.
Right.
Interesting side note, Paul Rubens, who played Cobblepot Sr., he also played Penguin's dad in the Gotham TV series.
Yeah.
Wow.
It all connects, man. They do a lot at CW for these little like cameos and tie-ins.
It's kind of beneficial for them some ways when a movie studio also owns the TV network.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that clip of the TV Flash meeting movie Flash?
Oh, I haven't seen the clip.
Yeah,
My friend made me fucking watch it. I was like, I know like nothing about this fucking show, no context, but here we go.
Well, we get in the movie 33 years later, and it's in Gotham. It's in, I guess, modern day Gotham. But what I love about Gotham and its citizens is it's like a vague era in time.
It's like timeless, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it might be the 20s or it might be the 90s. Who knows?
Like all their vehicles were like 1960s era, like Lincolns and Cadillacs, you know, things like that.
Huge percentage of the cars Burton used in the street scenes were Brazilian Volkswagens that they imported. But Jonathan, you're right. Normally they do a lot of like the 1930s-esque style cars. It was interesting to see these weird Brazilian Volkswagens kind of dotting the landscape.
We get to meet Max Schreck, who is one of our principal villains. Josh, why don't you tell us about Max Schreck and his introduction?
Okay, so Max Schreck is a bad guy, obviously because he's Christopher Walken.
Don't forget his sick haircut.
Dude, the sick haircut and the super pinstripe suit. Side note, did you guys hear that the Max Schreck character was originally supposed to be Billy D. Williams coming back as Harvey Dent?
Yes, they also originally offered that part to David Bowie. They wanted Bowie to play Shrek before. In fact, Burton was uncomfortable casting Christopher Walken to begin with, and then came to sort of love the choice afterward.
Until recently, I didn't know Billy D. reprised his role as Two-Face in the Lego Batman, but
yeah,
I guess I could.
That's pretty good.
I could go watch that, but I always imagined what it would have been like him as Two-Face. Hello, Batman.
Nice impression.
They were originally going to have the movie culminate with Selina electrocuting Harvey, and that being what caused the scarring to his face.
It makes so much sense, yeah. They call me Two-Face.
Right.
What is that impression?
I don't know. I'm so sorry, everybody. So, Max Schreck is kind of just a super shady business person who has a secretary, super shy girl by the name of Selina Kyle.
Yeah, she's got that classic movie trope where she's like super hot, but like not supposed to be, I guess.
Right. If you take her glasses
they kind
off,
of downplay her looks, and like she's very like nervous and bumbly kind of secretary.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shrek and the mayor, they go down to Gotham Square, and there's the tree lighting ceremony because this is a Christmas movie, and the tree lighting ceremony is immediately attacked by a bunch of clowns known as the Red Triangle Gang. Steve, why don't you tell us about this big action scene at the start?
So,
and tell us why they weren't in the first movie.
Right. I guess that the Red Triangle Gang has kind of risen from obscurity in between the time when the first one ended and this film coming out. But yeah, so the movie, you kind of open really with Bruce Schreck, Shrek's son, the mayor of Gotham. Actually, no, Chip's not in the room. His son's not in the room to begin with. But anyway, it's a group of them, some other people having a meeting in Shrek's office. You find out that Shrek is trying to pitch the city on letting him build a new power plant that they clearly don't need. And we'll find out more about what's really going on with that as the story progresses. But eventually Chip, Shrek's son, comes into the room and says it's time to go downstairs. The group of them go down to the square. It's more or less a knockoff on Rockefeller Square in New York City, where they do a famous tree lighting every Christmas. And they've got a whole celebration set up with a model wearing a skimpy, silvery, Christmassy outfit. They're calling her the Ice Queen.
Princess.
Ice Princess, that's what it is. And the mayor introduces Max. It's worth noting, because it's an important plot point, that as they're moving from Shrek's office down to the dais in the square where the celebration's having, that Max is threatening the mayor with removal from office. And basically, because the mayor won't allow this project to go on, he doesn't want to give Max special permission to just build the power plant and tax incentives. So Shrek is saying, I can get you replaced. And the mayor is saying, basically, you don't have a candidate or an issue, so good luck with that.
Yeah,
and they get down,
all plot points I never picked up on as a child.
Right?
Yeah.
You know? And it's important as an adult to note it for later, but they get down to the square, getting to what you really asked me to describe. And the mayor gives Max an introduction. He refers to Max as being Gotham Santa. And I love Shrek's monologue when he gets to the dais. You know, he's like, "It's Santa, I'm afraid not. I'm just a schmo who got lucky." And
Trying to give something back.
Claus, afraid not. I'm just a poor schmo, got lucky. And sue me if I want to give some back. I only wish I could hand out more than just expensive baubles. I wish I could hand out world peace and unconditional love, wrapped in a big bow.
So he's going on this long ranty speech. He also realizes that he's forgotten his speech. And concurrently in another shot, Selina is also realizing that Shrek forgot his speech. She realizes he's going to blame her for this, and immediately we get a line from him to his son to say, "Remind me to blame her for forgetting my speech." So he's making this all up, and this giant, just like fucking 50 by 50 square foot Christmas present starts rolling toward the square where everyone's watching this go on. And Mayor leans in and tells Max, "Well, it's a great idea." And Max says, "Well, yeah, but it's not mine." So it's clear that none of them know what's going on. What is this? What's happening right now? The box explodes. And from this explosion, skull-headed clown circus freaks on motorcycles come bursting out. There's glitter and there's other explosions going on in the background. All of a sudden, the Red Triangle Circus Gang has just completely come down on the square. And
they're really causing chaos down there.
This looks like goons that would be in the first film with the Joker. Like the clown shtick doesn't really it doesn't really mix well with Penguin to me.
See, I always thought that as a kid, but they explain it.
I really like it, and I like the fact that backstory that like these circus freaks were the only ones willing to take him in and sort of became his family. But there's also a line when he's trying to run for mayor, and he's living as Oswald for that brief period of time. He has a line about Gotham being overrun by, I think he says, maniacs in clown outfits, or maniacs in clown, something like that. And it's really kind of a double reference both to his Red Triangle Gang and the Joker from the first film. So this is a city that's got a lot of problems with clowns.
Yeah, I like that though. So there's
you killed two clowns with one stone.
Right?
There's the Joker. He's a guy that looks like a clown, has normal henchmen. And then you got the Penguin. Looks like a penguin, has clown henchmen.
But his clown henchmen are like these demented, like freak show clowns, you know? It's
scary clowns, yeah.
Right?
They're like Halloween Horror Nights, Universal Studios, scary clowns.
So they take over everything. They don't just take over the square. They start taking over side streets nearby. They got people running away. They're blowing up shop windows.
They're getting dogs to run in grenades.
Right.
So their goal is to abduct Max Shrek. So Steve, we've talked about this maybe off air.
Right.
When
I want to talk to the man in charge.
Yeah, when they go up to get Shrek, and Chip, his son, steps in and says, "Dad, go!
Dad, go!"
Chip, Dad, go! Save yourself! Dad, go!
He's doing his best impression of fucking Christopher Walken.
I love Dad, go!
But it's one of the few little details about that movie that always has bothered me a little bit is like, not only is he such a scumbag, he abandons his son to these people and runs away, but like Chip's in the movie again later, and they never really explain what happened. Like the last time you saw him, these gang guys were holding like swords and guns to his face, and it's just like, oh, he's fine.
They let him go, yeah.
Right? Like, all right.
Live and let live.
So the Batmobile shows up.
Yeah.
Batman's there. He's there to crack some skulls. First, he starts taking people out in the Batmobile. Jonathan, do you remember any points or...
Yeah, as a kid and probably now, my favorite scene of him taking out somebody with the Batmobile is like he has this, I don't know, like a platform thing that comes out the bottom of the Batmobile and like picks the car up, allows it to spin around, you know, and then there's the fire breather over there thinking he's a badass, you know, spitting fire, and then all of a sudden he just puts on his
Batmobile.
Yeah, and then he turns on the afterburners of the Batmobile and just lights this dude up. That was by far my favorite Batmobile scene.
Yeah, he's super murder happy, this one.
he comes
You
out.
don't know that guy was dead, though, man. He was right there by a snowbank. He could have rolled himself
I mean,
out.
just burn. He's fine.
Are we going on Home Alone logic here?
Yes.
Right? Absolutely.
I refuse to believe that Batman's really that bad of a murderer. I mean,
He blew up the strong man.
that guy probably deserved it, man.
For you guys or anyone listening, I know this is a weird aside, but there's a cutaway moment, an episode of Family Guy where it's Home Alone if it were real life. Just YouTube it. It's fucking hilarious.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Check that out separately. So Batman gets out of the Batmobile. He does rescue Selina Kyle in a very famous moment where he shoots like his grapple gun at a guy that's like holding Selina at gunpoint, and it like misses.
You missed.
You missed. So he like pulls like the wall out and like it hits the back of the guy's head.
Right.
I feel like I've seen that moment in either other Batman films or in like the animated series a lot. Like that's like a kind of classic Batman thing.
Pulls a piece of
It's
wall
really
out.
like a comic book move, you've got this super secret like spy weapon and you pull a piece of concrete off the wall and knock somebody out. I mean, it's total like tribute to comic book style.
Yeah, he's not like so much as of a ninja as he is like a Bond Batman. Like he relies all on his gadgets.
Isn't that true of him in general, though? I mean, that's kind of the thing with Batman is he has to lean back on the hardware because it's not like he's a superhero. I mean, he is but you know what I mean? He's not a mutant. He's not Superman. He can't like shoot electricity or blow people up or turn himself invisible.
You can still like kick somebody's ass though.
Well, he does a lot of that too.
Yeah.
You don't have to like pull out a batarang.
But Batman is not really a fighter guy besides like a few punches and kicks here and there. Yeah. I mean, he's a gadget. He's a tech guy. I mean, look at Bruce Wayne, dude.
He's definitely a fighter guy in long-term Batman canon, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, he's not like, crazy like an MMA fighter kind of style guy. Like he's kind of a rock'em sock'em
in this movie,
robot
definitely.
kind of guy.
He's very like stiff in the film, and
relies on the gadgets. I mean, and
he can't even turn his head, man.
Well, look, that's just a flaw in like you can take that one all the way back to the comics. The design of the bat suit from a functionality perspective is fucking awful. It's great looking, but it's really like nobody who ever did what he does would ever wear a suit like that.
Yeah. Hey, why did the first bat suit on this movie have nipples? I don't get it. Did you ever notice that?
In this movie?
Yeah.
The Schumacher ones have the nipples.
Yeah, I
thought it was the Schumacher.
So you watched...
Oh, you know what? You're right.
So to give a little bit of insight here, Jonathan accidentally watched Batman Forever and then realized that was the wrong one and then watched Batman Returns. So I think you were looking at the Schumacher.
You're right. You know what? I'll just explain the scene then. So,
did we see a close-up of Michael Keaton's ass or was that Val Kilmer?
Val Kilmer.
No, it's Kilmer, yeah.
Yeah, in Batman Forever, the suit does have the nipples. And then when they make the suit for Robin, they use the old Batman suit and the nipples still exist. But on the new Batman suit in Batman Forever, they get rid of the nipples.
Close, good attention to detail.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Speaking of detail, when Batman does take out that guy with that bit of wall, I liked how the guy calls him Man-Bat. Man-Bat. When I'm like, that's a different character. Like, that's a different guy. Anyway, so the Penguin's crew, they do eventually get Max, and they take him down to the Penguin's secret location. And he's hiding out in an old abandoned place called Arctic World, which I think was like a theme park or zoo that is long since abandoned, and he's taken over.
Yeah.
So he lives down there. It's very cold. There's a lot of actual penguins down there.
He adopted the penguins from the Arctic
well, they
Arctic
raised
world.
him.
They raised him, but he also refers to them as his baby, so, you know.
Yeah. Making logistics work for those sets was really a massive undertaking. They had almost the entire Warner backlot set up with sets for this movie. It was all in stages, and most of them, several of them anyway, had to be kept at a constant, like 32 to 35 degree temperature. And the penguins, they had animal experts there to help them. They were keeping the penguins on the stages full time, which is part of why they had to keep them cold. The penguins were so happy, and I mean this, they were so happy that they procreated, that some of them laid eggs, and apparently they will only do that in environments where they're super comfortable. And there were instances where they had kids on set, like for the crowds. They actually had to turn the temperatures up slightly temporarily to meet with like labor rules for kids. And it was apparently super weird for the cast and crew because they shot most of the movie during the summer on Warner's backlot in Burbank. So it's 95, 100 degrees outside and 32 degrees on the set. And there's people coming and going in parkas. And they were being so secretive about what they were making. Even other Warner employees, even members of the executive staff, were not allowed in the sound stages. So people would be like, what the fuck is going on in there? And no one would tell them anything. And like they even, God, I think it was Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner tried to visit one of the stages one day and they're like, you can't come in. And he didn't get in.
How do you even put into words an army of penguins, though?
Right?
But you know who
Like,
I am.
I have seen things that can't be unseen, sir.
Right? Some of the penguins were animatronic. It's very interesting. Anyway.
So down there in Penguin's secret location, he's going to blackmail Max. So what he tells Max is, look, I've been on my own. I was abandoned as a child. I want to come up to Gotham, and I want a chance to find out my lineage, find out who my parents were, why they got rid of me. And Max, being the shrewd, Trumpish businessman that he is, says basically, no, we're not going to let you do that. I don't really care. He's like, that's great. But then he blackmails him. He says, look, I know about all the shady shit you've been doing with the power plant, with this like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ooze you've been dumping all over the place. He's like, I know you killed the guy. I got his arm right here. Check it out.
Wouldn't it be great if they could cross those two universes and it turns out that Max's ooze is what created the turtles?
I was
know
about
what?
to say, we got Toga and Razor over here.
Speaking of which, I mean, there is a recent Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I haven't watched it yet. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I
I've
remember
seen
hearing about it.
scenes.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Can I touch back on something real quick?
Sure.
We've yet to talk about that. Danny DeVito is the one that plays Penguin.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty relevant.
For that character, could anybody else have played that?
Actually, this is all just a bad dream. You're at home in bed, heavily sedated, resting comfortably, dying from the carcinogens you've personally spewed in a lifetime of profiteering. Tragic irony or poetic justice? You tell me.
Oh man, he
Perfect
looks
casting.
he looks great for what the character is. I mean, the character is wildly different than the Penguin character in Batman comic canon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to touch on that for a second, too, because Burton talks about that. He says explicitly in his commentary for the film that he has always genuinely despised the way that the Penguin was portrayed on the TV show, and has also never found the comic book version even remotely interesting, and that the only way for him to make this work was to turn the Penguin, make the Penguin less of a weird short guy with a pointy nose and more someone who was genuinely just like a birth defect.
Yeah.
Make a freak out of him. And it also has sort of helped underline the connection between Penguin, Catwoman, and Bruce in the sense that, like, he's the only one of them. He even mentions it. There's a scene between him and Bruce toward the end, I think, where he's like, you know, I was born a freak. You have to wear a mask.
Yes.
You know? Like
I
that's...
want to give him flippers.
Right? Well, yeah, and they gave him the messed up hands, but that approach almost makes more sense. It's like, here's this guy with crazy birth defects. You know, Burton in the commentary to the point about who else would you cast, and I agree with you about it, but Burton says, he did say it was a pretty short list. That was Burton's commentary. It's basically who the hell else
Was
are you
that
going
a
to get?
pun?
What's
Was
that?
that a pun?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
That's a Danny
exactly,
DeVito
right?
pun.
But now, according to some of what else I've heard and read over the years, though, they did have some weird considerations. At one point, Dustin Hoffman was a consideration for that part. Makes absolutely no sense to me.
No good.
The list also includes, if you think that's no good, wait till you hear the rest of this. The list also includes Dudley Moore, Marlon Brando, John Candy, Bob Hoskins, who might have been an okayish choice, Dean Martin, Alan Rickman, Phil Collins, Charles Grodin, Ben Kingsley, John Goodman, Christopher Lee.
This is like the fucking Catwoman casting.
Right?
They're just throwing fucking names at the wall.
Right,
I mean, these were all big shots.
Joe Pesci and Christopher Lloyd were both in the list. Here's my absolute favorite. Corey might be the only person here who knows who I'm talking about. Robert Davi from fucking Showgirls. It must be weird to not have anyone come on you, guy.
Yeah, the Fratellis.
Right, yeah. One of the Fratellis. He was a consideration for that part at one point. Like, how the fuck did they ever come up with that?
It must be weird to not have anyone throw a batarang at you.
Right?
The only one on that list that probably could have even been really considered was probably Joe Pesci, just because he could fit into that look. Danny DeVito did. But the rest of those guys, I mean, you have like John Candy and John Goodman. Those guys are like monsters, dude. They're like 6'5", 500 pounds, you know? Like, there's no way those guys were going to play Penguin.
Clearly would have been a different take on Penguin, but yeah,
absolutely. The Duckmobile wouldn't have been able to lift them up.
Right? But obviously, he was perfect because he owned that role.
Yeah, and he's very like scary looking, and he has this that black and white Tim Burton look, and
Right?
I think he's great.
Dude,
Absolutely.
as far as I'm gonna make it quick, but as far as his look is concerned, he spent 3 hours every day in a makeup chair. He insisted on staying in character all of the time. And that little circus monkey that he has to interact with a few times during the course, the helper monkey that goes with the guy who's got the gun in the box, the actor monkey, so to speak, was so scared of his makeup, it didn't want to get near him. And they had trouble getting it close enough to him to pull the scenes off. During one of the early takes, during a moment where it's supposed to be handing him a note, the little monkey got so scared. I'm being serious. DeVito talked about this on the Graham Norton show. It attacked his crotch. It actually went to town on his crotch. It was so afraid of what was going on. And it did so much damage to the costume, they had to call cut and have him go put a whole new costume on. That's how much he scared the monkey.
See, this is why I respect actors.
Right.
Because I don't fuck with animals, dude.
Right.
Animals are so fucking unpredictable. An actor that's going to work with, like, a monkey or something, those things can go crazy and fuck you up.
That was the one other thing I wanted to mention. I made a note of this so I wouldn't forget. The makeup took so long to put on, he was getting bored during the sessions in the chair. So he got them to agree to partially renovate the inside of one of the makeup trailers. They removed cabineting, and in the place of the cabinet, he had them install a CRT TV and a Laserdisc player. So that while he was sitting in the trailer getting his makeup done, he could bring Laserdiscs from home and watch the movies on the TV.
What do you think you watched?
I'm not sure, but I hope it was something he was in. I think Twins came later, so it wouldn't have been that, but I hope it was something like that.
I think Twins came earlier.
Did it? You know, you maybe raised like 88, 89.
Yeah.
So maybe you're sitting there watching Twins, reminiscing.
Play it again, Betsy.
Right.
I think Danny DeVito's pretty underrated. I mean, he has
He
so
is.
many star roles, and like people just don't give him the recognition that he deserves, I think.
He's a
awesome.
godsend.
Oh, whoops! Oh, I dropped my monster condom that I used for my Magnum Dom.
He is.
Frank Reynolds.
Frank
Fucking killing it.
Good old Frank.
So, Josh, maybe you can tell us about Selina. So we see Selina. She goes home and then back to the office, and it's a very big moment in the movie, a very much remembered moment. Why don't you tell us about Selina?
So it's like a getting your hand caught in the cookie jar type of moment where she's like going back to the office to do some mundane shit, but Max Schreck is there. Does anybody know what he's doing there specifically, or is he like just trying to do shady shit covering up his like toxic shit?
No? Yeah.
Well, she went back because she had to get all the notes and the meetings prepped for Max Schreck's meeting. So she really wasn't doing anything mundane. She actually had purpose.
No, but sure.
But
And
like
then
mundane,
she got
in
into all
terms
his
of, like,
protected
she was
files.
doing work. He's like there with like
Yeah.
Oh, right.
doing like some super sketchy.
Well, he had just got released from the Penguin after they struck a deal to help each other out. So he was heading back
he's like doing some supervillain shit. And essentially, she just. Does anybody remember how she finds evidence? She finds evidence that like kind of points.
She goes into his
Well,
protected files.
she goes through the protected files and she says she guesses his
How
dog's
industrious.
name, his Chihuahua's name. What is it, Geraldo or
Geraldo.
something like that? Yeah, Geraldo.
How may I ask, did you get into protected files?
And
A very apt name
he
for the
catches
time.
her and is not too happy and throws her out of a fucking window.
A very nice scene with some good tension build up. I love it.
Well, he kind of fucks with her a little bit, and she's like, it's not like you could just kill me or something. And he goes, or could I?
Actually,
And then
it's
starts
a lot
macking
like that.
her against the window. And then goes like, ah.
My dear, I'm a super villain.
It's our secret. Honest. How can you be so mean to someone so meaningless?
This power plant is my legacy. It's what I leave behind for Chip. Nothing must prevent that.
Okay. Go ahead. Intimidate me. Bully me if it makes you feel big. I mean, it's not like you can just kill me.
Actually, it's a lot like that. Huh? Huh?
You know, for a second there, you really frightened me.
I think it's when he's having the meeting with Bruce and realizes Selina's back. There's a moment when Chip is there and Max lies about what happened, obviously, and Chip kind of backs him up. And the way they had it set up in the script originally, to my understanding, is that Chip was supposed to have been in the office watching and just didn't give a shit. Like he wanted to set up that he was as sadistic as his father was.
No.
Yeah, right?
So she gets pushed out of the window. She falls through 4 awnings to kind of slow down her descent. Falls into some snow, which would probably kill you anyway.
It's like a 1 inch of snow with concrete below.
I don't know. It could be some fresh powder.
Well, that was the first of her 9 lives right there.
Yeah.
Does that start the counter?
It does. She even says toward the end when she's counting off her lines as Max shoots her, like, you killed me, Batman killed me. She even refers to it.
Oh my god. That's... See, alright, there's some silly fucking writing going on throughout this whole movie.
I like it.
I enjoy the campiness of it.
I don't. I'm sorry. There's some things I like about it. You know what I mean? Like the Max Shrek character is pretty fun. He's kind of not too campy, you know, but it's just weird story choices like being resurrected by cats.
Yeah, well, we're gonna talk. We'll get to that more in ratings, but yeah. So let's talk about the cat resurrection. What's going on here, Steve?
Selina gets shoved out the window. She falls through awnings, hits cement, and she's kind of there unconscious for a moment. And then she gets approached by all these local cats, alley cats, and they sort of like lick her and chew on her fingers. And the one thing I didn't, to his point, like maybe that moment might be one of the few moments in the movies in the whole movie where I was like, maybe you guys could have done that moment a little differently. But somehow this process kind of brings Selina back to life. Right. And it's a comic book moment. And
it's an origin story so good they used it for the Halle Berry one.
Yeah, well,
sort of.
Look, hey, how dare you even mention that in context to this film, Josh? You should punish yourself.
All right. So in the Halle Berry movie, a cat walks on her chest and breathes magic, like
just straight cat magic.
Her. Yeah, straight up cat magic. It's very silly looking.
They had to I can't remember exactly what it was, but they had to smear Michelle Pfeiffer's arms in tuna or something, literally, to get the cats to approach her like that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. They couldn't get the cats to do it. And I think there were even a couple of moments where they had to put stuff on the outside of her cat suit in order to get the cats to get as close as they wanted. And and then there's a moment there where she's coming back to life and her eyelids twitch. And Burton mentions in his commentary that was something Michelle Pfeiffer just could do with her eyes. And he didn't even direct her to it. Like during one of the first couple of takes, she did it and he liked it. And for years afterward, people asked him, how did you make her eyelids do that in post? And he's like, I didn't. She did that herself. You know?
It's a pretty good moment.
Yeah.
She kind of is, like you said, being brought back to life in a way by these cats. At least that's what the idea that they're giving us, the audience.
Right.
She comes back and she's not the same. She's
yeah.
For a brief moment in time, she's halfway between her old self and her new self during her transformation. She comes back home. She tries to go through her normal routine and eventually has a total meltdown.
There's a specific thing that sets off that meltdown, which I didn't notice before until now.
And
it was the voicemail of the perfume company talking about if you wear this scent, your boss will, basically want to bang you.
Yeah.
And then she goes ape shit after that.
And she'd gone through that moment earlier with the voicemail messages. And one of the voicemail messages she hears to begin with in that earlier scene is actually Tim Burton's voice. I think it's funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The boyfriend?
I think it's the boyfriend call. Okay. But that's, to your point, Corey, that's kind of a recurring theme for the remainder of the movie. In fact, that's what her and Bruce have in common, is that they've got this fractured personality and that they're both kind of fighting against themselves to live either life. Anytime they overindulge either side of who they are, the other side goes wanting. And that, Bruce addresses it toward the end when he's trying to convince Selina to help him turn Max in and not to kill him. It addresses that, we're the same in that respect. In fact, to the point where when they get to the masquerade ball at the end of the film, they're the only two characters not wearing masks.
Which I love.
Me too.
I love everything about that scene.
Right, me too, 100%. We'll talk about it when we get there. But, Max jokes to Bruce, oh, what are you, a trust fund baby? Something like that. And it's well, yeah, because his costume is the version of him he presents to the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
And that's their common feature.
So we see this a little bit after, but I'm going to talk about it now. So when she becomes Catwoman proper and she destroys her apartment and she sews up a costume, one of the first things she does is actually rescue someone, like a damsel in distress
sort of rescues her, yeah.
Yeah. Like a woman's being accosted by just like not someone in the Red Triangle gang, but a random like street criminal, and she comes and like kicks his ass, which is just pretty cool. You get to see the Catwoman fighting style a bit.
Yeah.
But she's pretty mean to the victim. She's victim blaming.
Yeah.
Thanks. You make it so easy, don't you? Always waiting for some Batman to save you. I am Catwoman. Hear me roar.
All her escape backflips have got to be getting exhausting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that costume, they had to vacuum seal her, literally vacuum seal her into that costume to get to fit that way. She could only be in it with it sealed for 4 or 5 minutes at a time, or she'd get so short of breath she would pass out.
Jesus.
So doing the stunts in it on top of that must have been horrible. She also apparently couldn't really hear herself speaking. And one of the very few points of direction Burton had to give her was to remind her to lower her voice, because she was having so much trouble hearing herself in the mask that she would speak louder than she was supposed to. She also had to go through months of training to use the whip properly while she's wearing a suit that she's vacuum sealed into. And apparently she was moving houses at some point a few years ago, found the whip, and posted video of herself to YouTube or to Facebook trying to use it again, said, I can't do it anymore. But she had to go through 60 of the suits during the movie. They cost $1,000 a piece. Several of them were suits that they only used for a few seconds toward the end of the film because they were meant to look destroyed. The posters of her in the costume were getting stolen so regularly that Warner had to start producing huge additional numbers of them to send out to like bus stops where they were being taken. And police in certain areas were actually being asked to make additional stops at bus stops where that poster was in use to try to catch people in the process of stealing them. That's how often it was happening.
Wow.
Yeah.
People love that image.
Right? Absolutely.
Next, we get to see the emergence of Penguin into Gotham. And this happens kind of during a press conference. Josh, I think you had some things you wanted to talk about this.
Oh, boy, do I. The mayor of Gotham is trying to give his speech. And, like, out of nowhere, this clown, a member of the Red Triangle gang, does these like super Jedi prequel flips, and like shows up, takes the baby, and dives into the sewer. Unbeknownst to the crowd, he hands off the baby to the Penguin, but like you hear him like from the sewers saying some shit like "Oh no, great Penguin man." And
don't hurt me.
Don't hurt me. And a Penguin makes his grand appearance in the giant Duckmobile, and like tries to come across as like this, like a good guy, like a super, like he rescued a child, and it's like so obviously like he's like a deformed freak. He's got black goo like oozing from his razor sharp teeth. He looks like a fucking Batman villain, guys. Come on.
Yeah, but this was like a lot of like he was trying to do like image correction at this time, because there were so many rumors going around about him, this mysterious penguin man under the sewers. And, they were selling newspaper articles about this guy, like hot off the press,
He looks a goddamn monster. Like, how retarded would you be to buy this guy?
But that's the point. Like, he wants to change his image. Like, just because I look like hell doesn't mean I'm that bad.
Except
it turns out, he really is. But he really is. So it's a good thing I judged that book by its cover. It turns out he really is a monster. And like those razor sharp teeth and the black goo, those are red flags.
So he kind of is looked fondly in the public eye because he supposedly rescued the baby. He says he wants to find his parents. He goes to Gotham's Hall of Records, does a bunch of research, eventually finds that his parents are dead, and has a really beautiful scene at this small, cramped graveyard that is way too small to actually be a graveyard. The gravestones are way too close to each other, but it's a very nice scene. I like it a lot. What do you think?
I love that scene. It's one of my favorite moments with that character. I've always also felt that they made that graveyard look slightly more cramped than is the case, but I will also mention that in New York City, which was a heavy basis for Gotham, weird little neighborhood cemeteries, not much bigger than that spaces, are actually a thing. In fact, you may remember when we saw Once Upon a Time in America, the Noodles character goes back to New York because he gets a letter saying that his friends' graves are being moved. And when he goes to the graveyard where they were originally buried, the one he goes to is very much like that.
That's right.
Built in between two buildings, yeah. So that's not a complete act of fiction. But yeah, there's that moment, and then slightly later, actually no, it was previously, it's because it was while he was doing the research. There's that moment where he's in the city records room, and he's pulling out all the birth certificates, and Bruce is out cruising in the Batmobile. And while he's out cruising, he has sort of a conversation, a video call with Alfred.
Alfred.
He's like, yeah, he looks like a fucking monster.
Like, he calls Albert, hey, right? Motherfucker.
And, right? And he stops outside the records room to peek through the window at what Oswald's doing. And there's this very slow trickle of part of Danny Elfman's score. And it's snowing outside. That, 2 minutes is one of my favorite parts of any movie ever. I think the ambiance and the sound and the staging of it and the way they had the snow falling on the set just makes it's kind of beautiful. And there's something haunting about that part of it. And I think there's a moment there where Bruce realizes that even though this guy probably is a bad guy, there really is something the two of them have in common.
Yeah,
Penguin is still a person,
right?
So I definitely agree with you. Very nice scene.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nice scenes like that are visual storytelling that's quite nice in that way.
Hey, we forgot the scene where Alfred serves dinner to Bruce, and it's some kind of a soup or something. And
he spits it out?
Yeah, and he spits it out. So, it's cold. So it's supposed to be. Oh, okay.
It's
he just goes straight back
soup.
to eating
Yeah.
it. Yeah. It's just a memorable scene. Who spits your food? Just because it's cold, you spit it straight back into the plate?
I mean, I do.
Yeah, I figured.
I'm a child.
Well, you're from where? Arkansas or Alabama or something?
Alabama, yeah.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah.
Arkansas. What are you, Lieutenant Dan?
Arkansas's nowhere near Alabama, but I got you.
A couple 100 miles.
All right, so there's a meeting at Max Schreck's office where Bruce Wayne shows up, and he gets to meet Selina Kyle, this is post her accident, of course, and you can tell there's definitely something different about her. She has a different vibe, and Bruce is attracted to her immediately. They have a lot of flirting here and throughout the movie, and it kind of slowly starts to escalate, but that's where they meet. Shrek's thing is that he wants Oswald, who has recently found out his name, so Penguin's real name is Oswald Cobblepot. He wants him to run for mayor because he feels like he can use him as a tool for whatever stupid fucking political gains he's going to do with stockpiling power or whatever. But in the mayor scene, there's a very memorable part. There are some image consultants who are kind of poking fun at Penguin a little bit. And I'm just going to put it in here.
Not a lot of reflective surfaces down on the suit, huh?
Still, could be worse. My nose could be gushing blood.
Your nose could be...
What do you mean by that?
Did you guys catch that guy's name, by the way?
No, what's his name?
No, we're good. We're going to move on.
Why?
His name's Josh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, at this time, we find out Penguin is a horny bastard. I mean, dude, he's full of it, dude. He's like, I'd like to fill her void. I'd like to show her my French flipper trick. It's just
his whole motivation for his whole willingness to become mayor is just so that he can get laid. That's all he's interested in.
Yeah.
That's another thing I don't buy. He comes down the stairs, literally eating a raw fish, and everybody's just going with it like it's normal.
He ate that fish for real.
Oh, gross.
Like they Burton and the set people, they handed him the fish, and apparently he was told he didn't really have to like eat it. And DeVito was like, "No, it's cool," and he just ate it. But the
what a lunatic.
The guy's name is.
Do you expect anything less from the Trash Man?
No, right?
Trash Man.
The guy who plays one of the staff, the dude whose nose gets bitten.
Yeah.
His real name is Steve something or other, and like
his real name is Steve. His fake name is Josh.
Right. like a year before this came out, he was in another movie that DeVito was in about Jimmy Hoffa called Hoffa, and DeVito's character in the movie was like a crooked attorney. And there's a scene between the two of them where DeVito's character in Hoffa beats the hell out of this guy and kicks him out of a warehouse. And then like a year later, they're in this scene together where he gets his nose bitten.
Why am I always getting abused by Danny DeVito?
Yeah, like literally anybody could kick DeVito's ass. You know?
Do you want to come be in my movie? I'm going to beat your ass again.
So to make the mayor look bad, the Penguin and Shrek, they send the Red Triangle gang out to cause mayhem in Gotham. And they're just fucking shit up until Batman shows up. Batman fights these guys. There's not a lot of Batman fighting. This is one of the major scenes where it does happen, but I think more notably than the hand-to-hand stuff is the Game Gear Batarang.
The Smartarang.
Why don't you tell us about what he does with this thing, Josh?
So he pulls up it. Well, first of all, he's gotta load the update, and then after that, then he programs all the villains. It's like some Arkham Asylum type shit, and it like tracks down like a fucking heat-seeking missile. Knocks out all of the henchmen until it's just nabbed by a poodle.
Yeah, because he didn't program in the dog.
Yeah, you gotta factor in the dog Batman.
So while he was sitting there programming this thing, why didn't somebody just like kick his ass?
One of the guys had a rocket launcher pointed straight at him. I don't know.
Like, that's what I just never
You
understood.
gotta fight one at a time, goddammit. Have you never been a henchman?
Henchman 101. For sure.
Yeah, real shit.
And henchmen are the easiest people to knock out, ever. One punch, they're dead.
For sure. Meanwhile, Catwoman is in Shrek's department store just fucking shit up. Just like relentlessly breaking shit, and she eventually blows up the building.
She pulled open the gas lines and then put a bunch of like aerosol spray paint cans in the microwave. At this point, I guess I have a question for any of you guys who could answer it. So were her and Penguin actually teamed up, or were they both on separate rampages at the time? The Red Triangle gang was doing their thing wherever they were directed, and then Catwoman was on her own thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And
coincidence.
The big three get to meet here for the first time. It's kind of nice seeing them all in the same shot.
The dialogue between Danny DeVito and Michael Keaton, like Steve was saying with the scene with Penguin at the library, this is like that for me. That scene is so fucking good with Danny DeVito with the snow falling and everything.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes back, I agree with you, it goes back to what we were touching on sort of when we started about how Burton found real actors for these parts, and it's not to take away anything from any of the people in any of the MCU films or anything, but he found real actors who were willing to treat these like serious parts, as if they weren't playing silly characters in costumes from a comic book, and it's one of very few movies. V for Vendetta, they did very much the same thing. That movie maybe not as aged quite as well, but Hugo Weaving's performance in that was amazing.
I think it's aged pretty well, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. I generally do too. And the moments, whether it's DeVito and Pfeiffer or Pfeiffer and Keaton or whatever combination of the three of them, Walken too, the moments between them when they're out of costume and really interacting with each other, even a few of the moments where they're in costume and interacting with each other, is brilliant. You kind of forget you're watching people in these silly costumes, you know? Yeah. It's like... Yeah.
I mean, Penguin, when he's trying to put on his like public persona, whether he's talking to the public or Batman, he's so very poetic.
Right.
He's very like big and poetic. And
I think that's part of what I love about this film is it feels like it's a real film based on comic books, not a movie made from a comic book.
Yes.
You know?
Now, Batman and Catwoman, they have a little fight on a rooftop. there's a moment where Batman punches her like straight in the face and she falls down and she says, "How could you? I'm a woman."
Right? But right after she's left the claw in his ribcage,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, how does she find the one weak spot in his entire suit?
That's
he like leaves himself vulnerable. Like she's like feeling around his body armor, trying to
she's so
look for the
hot that
weak
he just
spot.
stops hitting her.
well, and that's one of the few moments in this movie, detail comic book dork stuff, where I was a little. I've always been a little bit bothered. I'm not going to let it get to me, but they've gone to great lengths in the comics over the years to show how specifically designed and well protected Bruce's costume is. It's armored. The chest plate is armored against bullets because he knows eventually someone's going to shoot a gun at him.
Like Max Shrek.
Like Max Shrek, and all this other shit, and like the idea that there's this spot along either side of him where his rib cage is that he would have left completely unprotected that way doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah.
Like,
I will say this as a kind of aside. This might be my favorite live action version of the Batsuit.
mine as well. I mean, I really like the one they used for him in the first one too.
I think this one's a little bit like fits better and like looks a little less rubbery.
Yeah, I would agree with you about that. I think the fit is better, and they also chose to, rather than having the abdomen plate, so to speak, look like, rather than having it trying to mimic a human six-pack, they made it more industrial looking, more car-esque, which I think is cool.
Yeah. So they do have that fight, and Catwoman kind of eventually gets tossed off a roof. I think Batman like backhands her and she falls off a roof, but she lives.
Yeah.
Saved by kitty litter.
Takes one of her lives.
Saved by
How
kitty
convenient she falls into a dump truck full of kitty litter.
litter. Or like sand, I guess, but whatever. Same difference,
Just
right?
really like that. Okay, I mean, just a detail thing, but like if she's got 9 lives and she's going to survive it anyway, then that detail was unnecessary. They could have just had her hit the cement. She's going to live anyway. Like,
So
Hey, one thing we forgot right before the Catwoman and Batman fight, where the three of them were all having their little powwow, Penguin escapes by helicopter umbrella.
I love that.
Like,
The
so good.
umbrella copter.
he's got an umbrella for everything.
yeah, well, that's one of the few things they took from the comics and the old TV shows is that he's got the umbrella, up to the point where in that last moment when he's dying, he tries to grab one to shoot Bruce with, and it turns out to be a dud. And he's like, he says, "Shit, I grabbed a cute one." You know,
I think they should have taken that line out.
I do not. I'm glad it's there.
I like the idea. This has always been in my head ever since I was a kid. That like in his last ditch effort, he grabs one and he just wants the cute one. He just wants to have the nice one before he dies.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I like the way they did it, but I would have liked that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to get to his death later. I have a lot to say about
Yeah.
it. So to kind of bullet point through it.
Catwoman had a memorable quote right there at that scene too.
Meow.
No, life's a bitch, now so am I.
There's a lot of one-liners like
Yeah,
that.
she's also got that moment when she's talking to Bruce about the potential date, I think, and she says it's going to be a hot time in the cold town tonight, which is almost exactly what Napier says to what's his name, the other mobster, when he's electrocuting her.
Yes, it is. It's like a 1-to-1.
Right?
Almost.
It's like, yeah, the cat puns aren't as bad as Arnold Schwarzenegger's ice puns, but they're there.
No. Yeah, there are a little bit, but yeah, I mean, this Schumacher took the stupidity to like 100 million times this level.
Oh, yeah.
Ruined it.
It's bad.
It's bad. It's really bad.
So Catwoman decides to pay a visit to Penguin separately after this incident and says, "Let's work together. Let's take out this Batman guy." And Penguin kind of has a plan for that, but they decide the best way to do it is to turn public opinion against him, to frame him.
Oswald, there's some body here to see you.
I'm not buying Catwoman's motivation. She's like, hey, I had like one run-in with Batman. Now I want to like become a supervillain and destroy him. I was like, first night out?
Yeah, why not? The guy's fucking with her.
Yeah. He took a life, damn it.
Yeah, he killed her.
So, meanwhile, we get to see more in Bruce and Selina. They have like a romantic evening by the fire at the Wayne estate, which is pretty nice. We talked about some of the dialogue there earlier, but I just bringing it up to highlight that their alter egos are starting to connect as well.
It's another nice actor moment for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, I feel like they know who each of them are at that point, and they just choose not to say, like Selina Kyle knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
I don't get that vibe.
Knows.
Yeah,
really?
Because it's the comment she makes to him on the roof at the masquerade later is what literally links them to each other. When we're talking about, a kiss can be deadly if you mean it.
Yeah, I felt like early on they really knew who each other were, and they just chose to shut the fuck up about it.
It's possible they've got a weird relationship in the comics. Like, he knows who she is. He knows because in the comics she's really kind of a cat burglar, and he knows what she's up to, and he continuously declines to really do anything about her because he's kind of obsessed with her.
He's got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
So we have a second tree lighting ceremony, which is basically a trap for Batman, which he walks right into. Yeah. Penguin has the Game Gear batarang from earlier, and he kidnaps the Ice Princess by posing as a photographer / talent scout.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I thought, like, he fucking killed her.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a moment where it certainly seems like it. He just flings that thing at her point first.
It's so funny that he has this batarang in his hand, and she's like, "Oh, is that a camera?"
Yeah.
Yeah, you dumb bitch.
like 10 years at least before anybody had really seen a digital camera. Like,
yeah, they look like this. That's what they're shaped like. Yeah. So they kidnap the Ice Princess. Batman shows up to rescue her, and he fights Catwoman again. They have a more romantic moment where after fighting, where she like straddles him and she does the mistletoe kiss, but she like licks his face.
Yeah, she licks him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that. Somebody says something
where he says like, "You hungry for more?"
Oh yes, no. He says, "Eat floor, high fiber."
Oh yeah, I love that.
There's a lot of quippy one-liners in that moment.
It was set up to look like I did this.
No sweat. I'll just tell the police I was kidnapped by an ugly bird man with fish breath.
Somebody say fish? I haven't been fed all day.
Eat floor. High fiber.
Right, well, come on. I mean, it's still better than holy rusted metal Batman.
Don't talk about
it. No, but the metal, it's all holy and rusted.
So bad.
It is. It's horrible.
So the main thing that happens here is that they kill the Ice Princess. They kind of like get her to fall off the roof.
He fucking spirit tosses the umbrella.
And one guy yells, "Batman, push the princess!"
Hey, Batman, push the princess!
Oh, okay, so I want to talk about that for just really briefly. So she goes off the roof. That dude in the crowd says that line. And like right as he's saying that line, there's a shot that's maybe 3 seconds long. But it's kind of looking up at Bruce's face in the cowl as he's looking over the edge of the building to watch her fall. And a spotlight in the distance is kind of coming across and lights up half his face. That shot is one of the greatest shots, I think, of any like comic book film. It's so, you know what it looks like? You've got the shirt of Joker and Harley of Alex Ross's artwork.
Yeah, I do have that shirt.
That moment, that shot, if you freeze frame it, looks like an Alex Ross painting. It really does.
Alex Ross is so good.
He really is. I mean, and I there are things about his style that I dislike too, but he really is brilliant, and that it's beautiful.
Marvel's is just like the most brilliantly illustrated book I've ever seen. Yeah.
Kingdom Come. I mean, how can you not like Kingdom Come?
Yeah.
Like.
So anyway, you're right. Thank you for bringing that up. So Batman is kind of looked at now as like, oh shit, maybe he's like out there killing people. Like there's some evidence to support that, but
like he hasn't been killing people.
No, I guess true.
Well,
but
nobody cares when it's a Red Triangle gang member.
It's more strongly reinforced when he gets in the Batmobile.
That guy tried to mug a lady. It's okay.
He gets in the Batmobile and it has been tampered with by the car experts Red Triangle gang.
There was a way they had written into the script originally. It was going to be much more explorative into how that happened. There was, I can't remember what the mechanism was, but they originally wrote in a mechanism where it made way more sense that, that's what it was. That, okay, even this, it's not perfect. In the original story, Oswald was supposed to somehow come across an engineer that helped Bruce with consulting work on the Batmobile, and that guy was supposed to have been able to supply Oswald with the diagrams he needed to do that.
Oh, okay.
But they wrote that part out of the script without fixing it.
So it's just like he has this info
So he
somehow.
just has it. The other thing that bothered me, and I had the same problem with that moment in, was it the second in Nolan's films where that guy goes to Fox and tries to blackmail them saying, I know who he is, blah, blah, blah. Like, Bruce has historically always made a point of engineering as much as possible by himself.
Right.
And in instances where he can't do it himself, he always finds a way to get somebody else to do it in a manner that gives them no clue as to what they're actually working on.
Right.
So there's no way in hell he would like involve another person in designing the Batmobile and then just say, oh, you go ahead and hold on to those diagrams.
Well, in
He'd
this
never do
movie,
that.
they don't give any indication that he does.
In this movie, he got in the zone, auto zone.
Right.
And
Well,
that
no,
info got leaked out.
I love that part where he's doing the wiring work on the Batmobile himself. You know, where Alfred comes in with the invitation for Shrek's ball. Like, that's the way he'd be doing it.
Now, Jonathan, why don't you tell us about the Batmobile shenanigans? Because it's hijacked by the Penguin, and things are going crazy here.
Yeah, so at this point, there's like was there chaos going on in the city at the time, Red Triangle Gang? I don't think they were doing anything, right?
No, all the chaos was Batman's car.
Right. So he was just, he's in the car, he's locked in.
Actually, sorry, that's not true because the chaos was the Ice Queen shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
The Oswald Cobblepot School of Driving.
Right. So over the video screen in the Batmobile, Penguin comes on and he's remote controlling, driving the Batmobile through the city.
From his ducky?
Yeah.
No, he's in like a little toy, like...
Oh, that's right, he's in the toy car.
Yeah.
Telling him to do a barrel roll.
It's like... It's like what you see in front of grocery stores. Like,
Yes.
Yeah, right? Put a quarter
And it's
in,
moving.
spin around.
I fucking love such a Burton thing, the way to do that, but I fucking love it.
I
It's like-
always wanted one of those things, goddammit.
Right. It's great.
Who
It's one of the
doesn't
best
want one
movie
of those
details
fucking
ever.
things?
like those are, I'm pretty sure, the actual ones that they had out.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
You know? And he's sitting there going nuts, bouncing up in his chair. That whole performance is great.
So yeah, and then so they're just kind of like he's driving them around through the city. They almost hit people, they almost run into things, and then there's like this old lady walking across the street, and somehow Batman's able to hit the brakes on the vehicle, and the
He
brakes work, and
punches
he
through his
stops just in
dashboard and
time.
finds the thing that they're using to control the Batmobile.
Which is so weird because they didn't put it in the dashboard when they like showed the guys planting the device.
Right, and they clearly were, because they had like wiring diagrams, they rewired like a third of this vehicle. Like, I'm willing to believe he could find a thing and pull it and it would shut the whole vehicle down. But like, if they had to do that much rewiring work, pulling that thing would not just make that
give you
problem
control
go.
back.
Yeah, like,
There's
no, all
no
of a sudden
way.
it works perfectly. You just tore a bunch of wiring, it's not going to work at all now. Like,
And you're right. So he does stop the car. He gets control back, and he escapes the police. He turns his car into the Batpod, sort of, from Dark Knight.
That's a cool moment where it like sheds the sides.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, and it's like, why would you have ever thought to have engineered that in? But
And there's like 6 cop cars are still going full speed at this gap that they know they can't clear, and then they just all pile up and blow each other
isn't
up.
there a moment? Yeah, there's a moment almost like that in the first one too, where the cops are chasing him. He ends up getting the Batmobile to like, climb a wall or something, and
Batman
the cops all
Forever,
crash.
yeah.
Oh, that was in Forever. You're right. So forget about it. Not canon.
But that, I mean, that's a traditional, Gotham City police force scenario.
Why do they keep chasing him?
Yeah,
The guy's there's a guy wearing an armored suit driving a rocket car. Do you really think you're going to catch him?
Just give up like you normally do.
Right.
right. Let's just chase him until we get into a situation where we can't get out of it and then kill
The
ourselves.
only
on
time
top
they
of
don't
which-
give up is when they're chasing Bruce.
Yeah, well, exactly. And on top of which, you want this guy around so much, the city paid for a literal bat signal to call him with, so, like, maybe don't chase him. You invited him. Like...
No, we gotta give him a fucking speeding ticket.
Right? You're going much too fast while you save our asses.
I think
literally
They
everything.
do enforce.
I think it'd be more like an exhaust system ticket.
Oh, yeah.
He's got no catalytic converters on his jet turbine.
Sir, has this
True.
Batmobile passed emissions?
Probably not.
No.
So Penguin, who's still running for mayor, goes to give a big speech, and Batman has recorded some of the information that Penguin was saying when he was driving the Batmobile. You got to admit, I played this stinking city like a hop from hell.
Right.
So he
He stupidly confesses everything.
The villain's always got to do that at some point.
he hacks into the I guess the microphones or the mixer or something, and he starts playing that back.
He has him and Alfred find the frequency transmissions of the microphones and taps into that, and then overplays this CD recording of all these things that the Penguin had said. And then don't forget the little urgent. He does that like twice.
Very much of the time. That doesn't work. Yeah.
And then he's going to let the bass drop.
Admit, I played this stinking city like a harp from hell. You gotta admit, I played this stinking city like a harp from hell. I played this stinking city.
So the public immediately turns on Oswald and starts throwing vegetables and eggs at him.
It's a good thing we brought all these vegetables here.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's one of the very few moments in the movie that's always bothered me. It's like, why did all these people show up for an electoral speech carrying cabbage?
You can't criticize it. He acknowledged it.
Yeah, shut up. No, just because you acknowledge it doesn't make it a fucking plot hole.
Like, you just fucking, why are all these people standing around with like cabbage and carrots and shit? Also, I forgot to mention when we started talking about it, but I think it's worth injecting now. The original script, well, not the original script, but the first draft to include both Penguin and Catwoman, actually had them teaming up to go look for lost treasure. And they ended up rewriting it into this. So if you've ever had any doubts about this story direction, just be glad they didn't do the treasure.
Yeah, I'm not into that. I don't like the sound of that.
Right?
That sounds like an Indiana Jones fucking terrible ripoff.
And you want to get really creepy. I forgot about this detail, and you have to really look to notice them at all anywhere in the film. I don't know why he was so specific about wanting them. There's a moment, they didn't do it with the DiCaprio version, but there's a moment in one of the film adaptations of Great Gatsby, and I'm pretty sure it's from the original book as well. It's just been years since I read it, where you find out as the story goes on that Gatsby's really involved with the mob, and there are multiple moments where he has sort of mob associates over at his house. One of the guys he has over at the house was supposed to have been involved in an infamous fixing of the World Series during the early 1900s. So something that really did happen. But in the book, one of the details they give to this character is that he wears cufflinks made of human teeth.
That is in the DiCaprio version.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
I forgot they included it in that version.
Wolfshine, yeah.
Oh, you're right. Wolfshine does have them.
Yeah.
So it was in both movies. So obviously DiCaprio's version of the movie didn't exist yet in 91, 92. But Christopher Walken specifically wanted a set of human teeth cufflinks to wear with the Shrek suit. They were fake, obviously, but he got them.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I'm taking on the bet. Man.
I need some teeth in my sleeves.
So when Penguin starts getting vegetables thrown at him, he does the only sensible thing, and he starts opening fire on the crowd. So he starts shooting them. He escapes. He goes back to his lair and decides, you know what, it's time to unleash my true plan, which he was going to do all along, by the way. They've set it up throughout the movie. He wants to abduct the firstborn children of all the high society in Gotham and murder them.
Kind of a weird plan, but okay.
This was all
right.
At the same time, he realized that he wasn't going to get any sexy time with Catwoman.
Yeah, that was also a discouraging moment for him.
Right. So he's like, oh, screw it. I'm not going to team up with her if she's not going to put out. So I'm just going back to my old plan. I'm snatching firstborn boys. Like, that's way opposite.
As a disgusting mentally ill freak, I really thought this plan would get me in bed with this woman.
You're right. I really thought, she was going to touch my penis, but you know what? Back to square one. We're kidnapping the kids.
Right.
So I want to talk about one of my favorite scenes in all of film, and that is Shrek's Masquerade Ball.
Yeah.
I really love this scene. I think this is going to sound weird. I think it's one of the most romantic scenes in any movie for me. So at Shrek's Masquerade Ball, like Steve mentioned before, everyone's dressed up except for Bruce and Selina. And they meet and they have a bit of a dance and a talk, and Selina's like really cracking at the seams here. She's not doing so good. Her plan is to murder Shrek as Selina Kyle as opposed to as Catwoman.
She's like packing.
Yeah, she's packed. She's got that little gun.
It's like a Derringer.
So I brought this in my purse.
No, me and Max? No, me and this. Or Max and this. That was the line, but yeah.
So there's a moment when they realize they're under the mistletoe and they they both copy each other's lines from earlier in the movie. And she says, "A kiss under the mistletoe," and he says, "Mistletoe can be deadly if you eat it." She
Kiss
says,
can be deadly if you mean it.
Exactly. And this is the moment of realization they have. Like the acting in this is so good. They don't say anything, but on their faces, you know, that they're like, holy
Their
fuck.
faces tell the story.
Absolutely.
For sure.
It's a very nice scene. I love the music that's playing. It's just
that song's one of my favorite songs of all time. In fact, I have it in my iPod. I put it on my way over here because I haven't been able to get it out of my head for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, I listen to it all the time.
Right.
Face to face.
Face to face. Susie and the Banshees is awesome.
Very good.
Don't forget that Selina has this breakdown. She's crying, and Bruce is there kind of as her savior in the moment and wipes her tears away, which was I agree with you that this is one of the best romance scenes for a superhero movie.
Oh yeah.
Especially of all the different Playboy-esque type relationships that Bruce Wayne has had over all the movies. I think that was definitely the best acted version.
And they have such a connection because of their of who they are and what they're doing.
It's in that moment they realize that they're the same. They realize that for both of them, the person they're presenting to the world, at least at this point in their lives, is no longer really them, at least not fully them. It's the first moment where Selina really seems to suddenly realize like what she is now, what she's doing, what she's done, where this has all gone. Like, there's no going back to who she was before Max shoved her out that window. Like, it's kind of a devastating thing to come to terms with.
Absolutely. And this dance scene is somewhat mimicked in The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not as good.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of like just Bruce Wayne scenes, this is probably one of the best ones in like both films. Like Bruce Wayne, like a lot of people know, there's like kind of 3 assets to it. There's like the facade, then the Batman, and then the Bruce that really only Alfred ever sees. I feel like every time we see the facade part of, it's like he comes across like a fucking alien, and like he doesn't know how to talk to normal people. Which
he is quite awkward and stumbles a lot.
Especially in like when he's talking to Arliss in the '89 Batman.
Robert Wool.
Yeah.
Who's that? Alexander Knox?
Yeah, Alexander Knox.
Okay.
He was also Arliss.
Taking it back old school.
He did a great cameo in American Dad too.
I think Tim Burton's more like comfortable just writing just straight up Batman shit, and even at that, like Batman doesn't get a lot of dialogue. A lot of Bruce Wayne scenes, even ones like this, are like 2 minutes long.
That was super intentional.
Yeah, I guess it is. He's trying to keep it more mysterious. There's just much still.
He mentions briefly during the commentary, during the early scene where Bruce is in the meeting with the mayor and Shrek about the power plant, that like it was an opportunity to inject a little of Bruce being somebody other than Batman for a few minutes. Here's Bruce's business side. And when he's there, he's very confident because he's very practiced at it. Because when you think about it, to your point, Josh, those are really Bruce's 2 sides. He's got the side of him that acts as the head of Wayne Corp and is doing business. He's got the side of him that's Batman. But on a human level, Alfred's pretty much the only person he ever interacts with as a person. Alfred's the only person that gets the real Bruce ever. So when he has to do it with someone else, it's very awkward. He doesn't really know how to interact with anyone other than Alfred in that way. It's part of what he alludes to ruining his relationship with Vicky Vale. And much to your correct assertion, Burton states pretty clearly in the commentary that like he never wanted Bruce in any scene under any guise to have too many lines. He never wanted him to speak much, even more so while he was wearing the mask, because the attitude was that like every word he says while in the Batman suit is just an additional opportunity for somebody to identify his voice and figure out who he is. And also, to your point, to like it gives him more mystery. It makes it harder for anyone to pin who he is down as a person. And it makes it much harder to say, oh my God, wait a second, Bruce Wayne and Batman seem a lot alike, because then under any of those guises, he's never much. You never get much.
I think I much prefer Christian Bale's interpretation of Bruce Wayne, but I love Michael Keaton's version of Batman.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I might agree with you about that, at least to a degree. I like the way Burton had Bruce play, but I also will concede they removed a little bit of that masquerading as a playboy element, which is something I think that Nolan and Bale embraced with that interpretation.
He doesn't really seem human at scenes, with him sleeping upside down and shit like that. He just seems like he seems like he fights crime at night,
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the point, right? To underline that, like, this person, whatever makes a normal person normal just doesn't really exist for this guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you gotta have the Tim Burton, fairy tale logic,
Right.
So back at the masquerade ball, Penguin crashes the scene. He breaks through the floor in a giant duck, which I love the giant duck.
That duck was from an episode of the TV show, I think.
Really?
Yeah, they definitely had used it in another Batman property, like during the late 60s, and Burton kind of found it.
I love it.
Yeah.
He shows up and he's like, "Sorry, suckers, I've kidnapped all your kids. Come with me, Chip."
Right?
Dad, no.
Dad, no. Save yourself.
Oh no, it's the Penguin Man.
He tries to take Chip, but Max says, take me instead. And that's kind of shows his love for his son finally,
Yeah.
Take me, I'm the one that wronged you, don't kill my son.
It's another element they were supposed to underline in earlier drafts of the film, that, like, the one thing in the world that Max actually really does love is his son.
Yeah, and they hint at it here and there, but
Right.
yeah.
They also kind of hint that he somewhat loved his wife too, right?
Yeah.
Or did he throw her out of a fucking window too?
Right. He does make a snide comment to Chip toward the beginning, something or other like your late mother, but I can't remember exactly what the line was.
He probably tossed her out a window.
Right. I think
I tossed her
Geraldo
out
the
of a
dog may
fucking
be the only
window.
other thing he liked.
Meanwhile, Batman is stopping the child abductions. So he puts a stop to that pretty quickly. It never actually goes through. Because Penguin is when he kidnaps Max, he puts him in a cage. And he's basically tells him, "I'm going to make you watch me kill all these kids, and then I'm going to kill you."
Right.
Pretty fucking horrific, actually.
It was supposed to be even more graphic, and at some point, apparently it was actually Burton who had the realization rather than one of the studio executives. Burton sat down and looked at what they had planned out for him. It was like, we can't do this. Like, kids might actually go see this. It's going to freak them the fuck out. Like, we've got to tone it down.
We might lose our Happy Meal endorsement.
Which they ended up doing
my
anyway.
God.
But I mean,
Yeah.
in fairness to Burton, as far as that goes, Burton never wanted that toy deal. Warner's did that. Burton has stated before he had no interest in being involved in tie-ins with toys and Happy Meals and shit.
So do you guys think this was the scene that ended the Happy Toy Meal deal? Or
I think
do
the
you
whole
think
movie.
Yeah.
The whole movie did it.
The way the toys looked, the movie, all in and of itself, absolutely.
The
By the
moment
way, I
Danny
still
DeVito
have-
shows up with the fucking monster face.
Right?
I still have my glass cup with a handle on it
Yes.
from McDonald's from
I
this
used
movie.
to.
And I still use it.
Absolutely.
Nice.
It's a regularly used cup in the cabinet.
I had some of those Happy Meal toys before they got pulled. I had the
Yeah.
little penguin. Everyone had the penguin
And
one.
I got that one too. I think everybody ended up getting that one.
Oh, because they didn't go through enough? Yeah.
Right.
They got pulled before they could rotate them out.
Right. They had more of
throwing
those
them
or
away.
something.
So Batman stops the abductions. He leaves a note for Penguin, which he gets. What I love about Batman's note is it's mostly handwritten, but it has a pre-printed Batman watermark,
And
letterhead.
he doesn't get mad that it's Batman until after he reads the note, but the giant fucking bat symbol on the top of the letter should give it away right away.
It says, "Dear Penguin, the children are unable to attend."
Yeah. And I think that was the scene they were trying to shoot when the monkey went apeshit on DeVito's balls.
Literally ape shit.
Right?
Oh, one other thing that did happen prior to the note showing up, when the Red Triangle Gang was out there trying to snatch up all the firstborn sons of Gotham, they had this toy train that they had resurrected from Arctic World, probably ran on tracks or something.
Yeah.
And that's what they were going around town in this train
I love
to pick
it.
up these kids. Oh yeah, come with us. It'll be fun.
It's very Burton-y.
Yeah.
So what Penguin does, he has a new plan. He's like, all right, I'm not going to kill these kids. I'm just going to blow up Gotham. I'm just going to fucking shoot rockets at this place and
Fuck
take
it,
it.
Hail
the fuck
Mary.
down. And he has the cutest army ever. He's got an army of little penguins with little rockets strapped to their
Little
backs.
kamikaze penguins.
He has them like all set up like in stadium style seating to deliver this militant speech to these guys.
Yeah, Steve, you said it was a Patton speech?
Yeah, he gives them this Patton speech, like from the movie Patton.
Yeah.
But it's kind of brilliant set use, you know, because it's like clearly this was a working like zoo facility, really, and this would have been where an audience went in to watch the penguins like do stuff in their little pond, you know, and instead it's become the audience gallery for the penguins. Well, the penguin gives his Patton speech to them.
Right. They have their little like headpiece, I guess, which gives them the orders. I don't know if it's that or if you can talk to them. It doesn't really matter.
It's kind of a strange one. It's like, how exactly does that control mechanism work? But you don't really need to worry too much about that.
Right. I mean,
Tim Burton.
Yeah. Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
So the way that Batman and Alfred stop this is they jam the signal. So the penguins kind of spread out among Gotham, and they're about to fire on
These penguins are being led to a location by some sort of like
GPS.
A GPS
Something.
like sonic frequency that they're following.
Right.
Tim Burton.
And Alfred jams the signal.
Right.
And like sends them back to the Arctic world. And Batman's in his bat boat, and he's coming for Penguin. Which is it's a pretty cool prop. We don't see it that much, but I do like the design of his vehicle here.
Yeah.
Penguin's crew basically bails because they see Batman coming, and they're like, you know what?
This is over.
Yeah, we've been taking too many losses.
Sending an army of penguins loaded with rocket launchers into the city appears to be the last straw. So
Yeah, and he's about to like come back here and kick everybody's ass. So I got things to do.
Right. I mean, plus when that one big clown questioned stealing all the firstborns, Penguin just shot him and kicked him into the water, so...
Isn't that a little, No, it's a lot.
Right? But it's a good setup, because a little while later, that's how Max gets a hold of the gun.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And Batman comes in, he has a small fight with Penguin, and he has like a control mechanism to fire the rockets. Penguin gets it, but all the rockets are like pointed at them. Sort of, and he presses the button.
Alfred and Bruce have rerouted the penguins back to the zoo so that their rockets will fire at the ice enclosure. And I guess Penguin doesn't really realize.
Alfred, because
it's true.
Because Batman was in his boat. Yeah, it was like the bat boat that conveniently fits inside all of like the sewer tunnels of Gotham.
I like to think Bruce would have designed it that way on purpose, but it's a good point.
Yeah.
I'll go with that.
They've set up a universe where, like, when Penguin starts swinging on him with his, like, little umbrella knife, like, if he, like, be careful, Batman. Like, if he, like, hits you in the ribcage, you might get fucking stabbed.
Yeah, you know this mostly bulletproof outfit you've got that's got, like, these 3 giant open zones with no protection for whatever reason.
Penguin might get the fucking upper hand, man.
It's not exactly the Iron Man suit, is it?
No, that's true.
So Penguin presses the button, the rockets fire at them, but they don't hit them directly, but they kind of fire around them. Penguin eventually falls through this like glass enclosure thing and falls into this big pool of water. It's a pretty far fall, it's a pretty hard hit against the glass, enough to kill a man.
Right.
Definitely.
All while Max Schreck is still in the cage, getting the monkey to bring the keys to him, because the keys are just conveniently laying there.
Now, apparently it wasn't a makeup issue, but I guess that little monkey also just didn't like Christopher Walken and would like freak out at him. And there's a moment during that scene where you can see Walken being kind of afraid to get too close to it, and that was real. That was because the thing had been freaking out at him.
Look, it was a long day. The monkey was just fed up with everybody.
I bet it was. Look, if I'd been the chimp, I'd probably be like, people put me in this fucking costume. I'm here for 18 hours carrying your shit around. Like, I'm done.
I'll be in my trailer.
He lights
eating
up
a banana.
cigarette. Yeah.
Right. Oh God, he's like Mr. Teeny. I love it.
Mr. Teeny.
He's with a little hat smoking.
How many more takes we gonna do, Tim?
Right.
So Max does get out, like Jonathan said. Catwoman comes to kill Max. She shows up. Her suit's all fucking busted up. Jonathan, do you want to talk about this moment a little bit?
Yeah, so she shows up, and I mean, her whole thing here is a life for a life. You know, Max already took one life from her when he pushed her out the window. She's coming back for vengeance. She finally has that opportunity.
Comically has 9 lives.
Yeah, exactly. I think she's probably got like 6 left at this point. But they're in the underground at the Arctic World Penguin's lair. All while all the missiles and rockets are going off up above, and then Batman shows up.
Yes, he tries to reason with Selina in another scene that I find very nice. Very, I want to say a human scene, but like it's they're human, but they're also larger than life characters.
Yeah, well, and God, they did such a good job in this film of underlining those scenes with just exactly the right close-ups and exactly the right environment. Like the water is reflecting the kind of moving light onto the walls, and it catches Selina's face, and just the whole thing looks so good, and it's so well acted and so well played. It's, again, I agree with you. It's another one of those moments where it's like, this doesn't feel like something based on a Batman comic.
Right.
You know, it feels like it's 10 levels above that.
Right.
It's very artistic.
So, yeah, and so to prevent Selina from killing Max, he actually reveals himself, which is like seems very un-Batman-esque.
Bruce Wayne, why are you dressed up like Batman?
Right. Max is, and then he realizes that Catwoman is Selina, and what does he say?
You're fired. Like, dude, are you? That one did kind of get me. I was like, is that really what you have to see? You're fired? You've already shoved her out a fucking window.
Oh yeah, dude, you're so badass. Like, you're telling her that you're fired,
right? Like, dude, Batman is literally in the middle. One psychopath in a costume is currently trying to talk another psychopath in a costume out of killing you. Like, is that really the line you've got right now? You're fired? Like,
and Selina and Bruce, though, like I want to kind of touch back to that, because you're right. He peels off his mask, which I've heard in another podcast. He peels it off like a fruit roll up. Like, it's just like he just like rips it off.
That one is kind of weird. He has such an easy time just like breaking it. And I'm 99% certain I remember reading and being told that they actually used a special mask for that scene, because otherwise he couldn't have done that.
The makeup on his eyes comes off.
Yeah, you're right. The makeup on his eyes comes off, and it is kind of a weird. Like, a lot of people had an issue with Bruce doing that. I didn't have an issue with the character doing it, because I think in that moment it is something he would have tried to do to just level the situation. But the fact that he was so easily able to tear it like that, rather than having to like physically remove it, I thought was kind of strange. Like, it doesn't make sense for a suit that durable to be that easy to just pull apart. Like,
I didn't like the fact that he actually revealed himself, just because Max was still there, and it's like,
Bruce Wayne can't fucking wait to tell people his secret identity. Guess what? I'm fucking Batman.
Well, I mean, who's he really telling, though? He's telling another person in a costume who's never going to reveal who he is, and Max Schreck, who after this, even if he lives and goes to the police, no one's going to believe.
And he doesn't believe himself, which I think is a really nice touch.
Right? Yeah, I mean, that moment when Schreck first sees him, he believes that Bruce is just running around in a Batman costume.
He's like, why? Yeah,
he's like, why are you running around dressed
just
like Batman?
Just wait till we meet Dr. Chase Meridian.
God, please don't. I never want to meet her again.
Chase Meridian Bank.
Right, yeah, the Bank of Psychology.
Yeah. Guess what? I'm fucking Batman.
He's like, look, if I need a loan, I'll come talk to you. All right?
I love the line that Bruce says to Selina. He says,
Selina, don't you see? We're the same. We're the same. Split right down the center.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. It's like just like that scene in where she breaks down during the masquerade, where like, you know, the two. It's really that realization that like you're two people and you're indulging one of them more than the other. Like, yeah,
it's very nice. And Josh, what does Selina decide to do here? She's got Bruce on one side of her. She's got Max on the other.
She goes full-blown like kamikaze, and she pulls out the taser that she had gotten way earlier in the film, and just ignites the shit out of Walken.
Yeah, taking herself with him, like she.
Oh no, Catwoman, no.
Steve, like what is it that happens here? I always have a hard time articulating what she's doing.
It's kind of a weird moment because she doubles down for no apparent reason, but she moves in to kiss him. She places the taser between her mouth and his, so that when their lips meet, it'll just light the both of them up. It's going to be going on like basically while they're pressed up against it. But then on top of that, she grabs a portion of a downed power line and like holds it against the two of them while they're kissing. So while she's blasting his head with the handheld taser, she's also electrifying the shit out of the both of them with this power line she's grabbed. And like, I don't mind the death. In fact, I think that death's kind of cool. But like, it's always kind of like that's kind of sort of redundant. I think the handheld one will be enough. Like, you're electrocuting somebody's brain. It's probably fine.
Dude,
but
she's trying to double kill him.
She double kill him. But that results in what I think is a pretty cool death moment. And some stuff collapses. And Bruce goes running in and tries to dig them out and finds that Max's body is there, burnt to a crisp, but Selina's body isn't.
Nowhere to be found.
Nowhere to be found. Like, that was another moment that if I were going to really start nitpicking the movie, that would be one of the few moments I would nitpick. Is like, how would she... fine, she lived, but how'd she get out from under that pile without Bruce seeing her? He was standing right there.
Well, what happens in between is the Penguin distracts him.
Oh, that's true. He turns around because Penguin is still alive, so maybe it was during that moment she... runs off.
The grotesque Penguin is mortally wounded. He's got green blood coming out of his mouth. He kind of crawls out of the water. He's super fucked up.
Are you sure that that's the sequence it happens in? Because I feel like he notices her body's not there before he turns around and sees the Penguin.
I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe you're right.
I don't know. I'm not... Yeah, whatever.
But the Penguin comes out of the water, and he's like barely hanging on to life, just barely clinging on. He goes to his like umbrella collection to get what I assume is the gun one.
Right.
And he accidentally grabs the cutesy one. And after that, he just kind of collapses dead. And the way that scene is shot and the music and like the ambiance and everything with the Penguin slowly walking out and in like a very sad tone, they kind of carry him to the water. Like, this was kind of like a member of their family or their father in a way.
Yeah.
I think it's a really nice scene.
No, it is.
Burial at sewer.
Right. Well, and he goes back and forth through the film, or like, it's also a play on a line from The Elephant Man. But there's one part where he says, you know, I'm a human. I want to be referred to as a human. And then closer to the end, when the mayor thing has gone away and he's angry and he wants to go back to being the way it was, he screams at one of his guys for calling him Oswald. You know, even though before he had done the opposite. This second time around, he's like, you know, don't call me Oswald. My name is Penguin. I'm not a human. I'm an animal. Like, it really has gotten to the point where, like, that's his world. There's nothing in the human world for him. There's nothing in the human world for him to identify with. He's never been a part of it. Like, he's just... It's kind of like that moment again where he tells Bruce, like, I was born a freak. You've got to wear a mask. Like,
Yeah.
that's who he is. You know?
Really nice death scene.
Right.
So did you notice when they do reveal Max's charred body that his eyeballs are still there?
Yeah.
Perfectly white,
Right,
blue-eyed
popping out.
eyeballs.
Very striking image, yes.
Yeah.
They did the same thing with the mobster prop in the first one after Napier kills him. When they pull away and smoking, and then when the smoke clears, it's like his charred body, but the eyes are fine.
You're right. So I was thinking that's one of the things that...
In fact, Burton must really like that because he does the same thing in Beetlejuice. There's that moment after Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin have died and they're in the afterworld in the waiting room, and there's one dude in the waiting room with them who burned himself to death.
Yeah.
He's got the charred body and the white hair, but his
Smoking?
eyes are fine. Yeah, he's smoking.
He's like,
yeah.
want a cigarette?
You're right.
I'm trying to cut down myself.
How awesome would it have been if, like, Christopher Walken was all like, "Oh no,
Been that
like,
guy.
my face is there's two of them."
Right. Guy, it would be great to type Beetlejuice together where it turns out that was Shrek's ghost.
Yeah. I love it.
In the waiting room, right.
So the way it ends is with, after all this commotion, it's Bruce and Alfred in a car. And, you know, Bruce, as far as he knows, Catwoman is missing, maybe alive. He never found her body. He thinks he sees her out of the corner of his eye when they're driving. So he gets out of the car in Gotham, and it's, you know, it's a snowy night. And he rounds a corner, but she's nowhere to be found. But a small black cat approaches him, and he kind of takes it in, and he gets back in the car.
And that's her cat. They don't really... You got to think
Miss
about
Kitty?
it. Yeah, but that's Miss Kitty. That's her cat from the other. The idea was, I guess, she was kind of saying, "I trust you with this animal. Like, I'm letting you know that I'm still around."
It's like a parting gift.
Yeah.
And it's very sad to me that... It's always been very sad to me that they never ended up together. Like, for real. Like,
Yeah.
I've always wanted that, and...
When it's such a consistent element between the two of them, even though this isn't really adapted based on the comics in the most strict way, that like in the comics, Bruce and Selina are so sort of almost dating constantly.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, and more recently, I think in New 52, they got married, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, some of the most recent ones I haven't kept up with as much, but yeah.
Yeah, very nice scene. The camera kind of, it tilts up from their car and it shows the rooftops of Gotham, and we see the bat signal light up in the sky. And we see Catwoman's body kind of lift up. We see her from the rear, from the back of her head. looking up at the bat signal.
That shot was an afterthought. I guess what happened was, I've heard conflicting versions, but I guess what happened was is they originally thought she was going to die at the end of the film and decided not to, decided they wanted to potentially bring her back. They came up with the idea to add that scene so late in the game that they couldn't schedule Michelle Pfeiffer to do it.
Right.
And they actually ended up having to film it less than 24 hours after deciding to add it to the movie. They really had something like 16 hours to get that entire thing organized and shot. It cost $250,000 to make that like 6 seconds worth of footage. And they had to get a body double to wear a Catwoman suit and shoot from behind because they couldn't get Pfeiffer to be there.
Yeah, big expense, because the reason they needed this, I think, is because they were shooting for a Burton-directed Catwoman movie spin-off. Which eventually, over many years, devolved into the Halle Berry version.
Yeah, now that we've okay, I don't want to drag this out too much, but like, as long as we're talking about that, I think it's probably worth mentioning. There was a lot of talk about what a third one was going to be like, and what if Burton comes back, and how do we make it an extension of this? When they decided to remove Dent from this film, they thought maybe they'd bring him back for a third one. They also talked substantially about Robin being in this film. There were Robin sequences storyboarded. Burton,
with Marlon Wayans.
Yeah, see, that's like, they didn't know who they were. Yeah, this is where it starts to get really crazy. They didn't know who they were going to use when they started storyboarding. But at one point, they cast Marlon Wayans to play Robin. And they even decided, in keeping with that, to rewrite the character's origin and have him be either a reformed gang member that was saved by Bruce, or a guy that worked in a garage, because they wanted him to potentially have mechanical skills that it could apply to having him eventually help Bruce like work on the Batmobile. And Marlon Wayans went through fittings, and a lot of people were real unhappy about this idea. Burton did not like Robin, had no interest in really including him, was pushing to get it removed. During early pre-production or early script revisions, Burton was able to pressure them to remove Robin from the story. I think it was Sam Hamm, who wrote the script for the first one and did the early drafts of this one, said that he found Robin to literally be the most useless character in the history of anything ever, and had no interest in including him in any of the stories.
That's fucked up.
Which frankly it is, but I kind of agree. It's a piece of pointless addition to those comics. At least as far as my opinion is concerned. Dick Grayson, sort of interesting Batwing, but anyway, Darkwing, but,
I don't know, Death in the Family is pretty good, but.
Yeah, I mean, Death in the Family is cool, but my favorite part about that, honestly, is the fact that they killed Robin.
Right.
Like, when they ended up deciding, they actually had a contract with Marlon Wayans. He'd signed up. When they ended up deciding not to use him for the second one, they pushed it off onto the third film. They thought that they would end up incorporating him into the third film, and Marlon Wayans' contract specifically stated that they were intending to bring him in for the third project. But then Schumacher took over, and Schumacher liked the idea of having Robin in the movies, but so much disliked the story direction that they had chosen, and so much disliked Marlon Wayans as a casting choice. He, out of his own pocket, it was not studio money, Schumacher personally bought the option on Marlon Wayans' contract and then canceled it.
Wow.
So that they couldn't cast him. And then gave the part to Chris O'Donnell.
Didn't they also buy out Billy D. Williams' part?
Yeah, I think they had to pay him out because they removed him from the second one. Yeah,
probably. Yeah. I mean, more on the spin-off stuff. The Catwoman movie script, the original version, it exists online. You can find it.
Oh yeah.
And there's a villain called Captain God that was going to be the villain of that. I don't know if that's comic related or not. Probably not, I'm guessing.
I don't remember that character.
But one of the beats of the Catwoman spin-off story was going to be that there's a bunch of mistreated women who eventually become Catwomen of different kinds. So like, it's not just Catwoman.
It's almost like Fury Road, where they're like the concubines who have escaped.
Well, it's more like other women that like get abused, have their own meltdowns, and become their own versions of Catwoman.
In that sense, it's almost a little bit like the play on the most recent Joker film, where it's like all these other people sort of take him as inspiration.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, for sure.
That sounds terrible, but
it does.
Like, I guess she was supposed to do more than just play basketball.
Yeah, Patience Phillips, the famous.
Oh fuck!
Right.
Halle Berry Catwoman, yeah. That movie, it eventually became a whole different thing. It's horrible, it's bad. Got a Razzie. She accepted the Razzie, Halle Berry, which is...
The only actress
nicer.
or actor to accept a Razzie, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Never mind. I was going to say something, but I really don't want to open an avenue for YouTube commentators to tear me apart for that, so I'm going to shut up.
Good thinking, Steve.
Yeah.
So you're holding back. You're doing it smart. So yeah, that's Batman Returns. It was a very successful movie, monetarily speaking. On an $80 million budget, it made $260 million worldwide. It was a movie that unfortunately killed the Tim Burton Batman movies.
Yeah.
and
Lost
turned
that
them into-
goddamn McDonald's deal.
Yeah, that certainly didn't help. It made, just as a side note to your point, it made $47.7 million the first 3 days it was open, which at the time was a record, and it only got broken about a year later because a little film called Jurassic Park came out. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a little indie film. You might have heard of it.
Right? You know, this thing based on a book nobody read.
So, you guys ready for ratings?
Yeah, although right before we get to ratings, because this is sort of related to the ratings note, Michael Keaton got paid $11 million to be in this film, which the studio was a little weary about, and Burton argued that he deserved it. When they hired Annette Bening, they only offered her $1 million, and when they replaced her with Michelle Pfeiffer, who was actually a lesser-known actress, somehow Pfeiffer got a boost to $3 million plus a portion of the profits from the film.
See, that's a good agent.
Which is a very good agent. Jack Nicholson was so reticent about taking the part in the first one, he was only willing to do it if he got a huge percentage of the profits. I've heard rumors that Jack Nicholson made something like $80 million just on his portion of the rights to that film.
Wow.
Which is insane.
Yeah, he was. He had a good casting agent, man. He got top billing in the Batman
That's a
movie.
solid paycheck.
Yeah, he did get top billing over Keaton. So anyway, just real quick to rotate back to the ratings thing. Burton and Keaton, over the years, have both stated that this is their favorite between the two films that they worked on. Michael Keaton apparently at one point actually said that he liked this film partly because he enjoyed filming it so much and because he felt that the movie spoke to him. But it then came out after the fact, partly because of a different interview where Keaton admitted to most of this himself. He's never watched the movie from end to end, ever. He's never watched it from end to end. He has no idea what it really looks like. He wasn't at the premiere, I guess, or wasn't paying attention. He was out of the room. And he partly decided to take this part because he needed money for a real estate deal. And they were willing to give him $11 million to be in the movie.
I was about to say, damn, did he have like a Jean-Claude drug problem? Was
No.
he also banging Kylie
And
Minogue?
this was right. This was one of those things where he wasn't going broke, but he needed a bunch of extra money he could invest in a real estate thing without risking. And this was just fine, I'll use what I'm getting paid to be in Batman.
Now, I think you said you talked to me off air about Batman castings. Did you bring that up because you had a better idea than Michael Keaton to play Batman?
That's right. Okay, so yeah, it's not necessarily a better idea. It's just something I was giving a lot of thought to. I did want to make a couple of casting note things and ask you guys a question. So, as a side, I've been rewatching a series I really liked called 30 Rock because Amazon added it to Prime for free. So I just decided I would rewatch the series. I haven't seen it in a few years.
I know it. Yeah.
One of the stars then probably is Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin came to prominence during the early and mid 80s. And if you think about what he looked like at that time, it didn't occur to me till I'd watched 20 episodes. I Googled a picture. I just searched for Alec Baldwin 1988 because that's about when they would have been casting.
Yeah.
Right. And, he was never so ripped, although he never played a part where he would have really needed to be.
The Shadow.
The Shadow. Yeah. The Shadow is a property that had a lot of potential that they executed improperly, but that is a separate argument.
It's a classic Steve.
Right? Keaton worked out fine. I don't want to imply that I'm unhappy with the fact that he was their choice, but when they cast him, a lot of people were unhappy. He was known mostly as a comic actor. He'd never done any real serious work. He'd never done anything like a Batman movie. A lot of fans, there was a petition sent to Warner's with hundreds of thousands of signatures on it that they wanted Keaton removed.
Yeah, pre-internet.
Right, pre-internet. And it ended up working out, but I was thinking to myself, if they'd buckled on that, Alec Baldwin in 88 might have been a really good choice. I mean, at least in terms of the way he looks, and go back and rewatch the way he presents himself. Hell, even watch 30 Rock. It's supposed to be funny. but watch the way he gets involved in the business scenes. He really could have pulled off, at the very least, he really could have pulled off the Bruce Wayne part of that part.
Or watch The Shadow.
Right? Well, maybe not watch The Shadow. Actually do, because it's still fun. It's stupid, but it's fun. And Russell McKay, he was an interesting director. But then fast forwarding in terms of current choices, I'm going to wait out and see what happens with Patton. I'm not going to make a firm judgment until we've seen the film. But Armie Hammer got me thinking. That dude's like 6'6".
Yeah,
he's got a very sort of wealthy, big white dude look to him. He pulled off the spoiled brat part, playing twins of himself in the Social Network. He does have acting chops. I'm not saying I'm sure he'd be perfect, but as a potential choice, I'm really surprised I haven't read or heard anything that he was considered for Bruce, because I think he'd be a great consideration for that part.
He was going to be Batman in George Miller's Justice League.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, with Common was going to be Green Lantern.
He certainly would have been a hell of a lot better choice than fucking Ben Affleck. Like,
Jonathan, do you have any ideal Batman casting choices, past or present?
No, man. Michael Keaton was my favorite Batman.
Yeah.
I always have the oddball opinions on stuff like this, but he was definitely my favorite by far. In the older ones anyways, in the 80s, 90s Batman era, I mean, obviously, Christian Bale and stuff like that it's a totally different era of Batman, but in the older stuff, I wouldn't change it.
I have a good original, like 89 Batman casting choice for you, right, Steve. Hear me out on this.
Okay.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
I mean, in terms of acting ability, I'll say yes to Daniel Day-Lewis for literally anything. I am personally convinced he is the greatest living actor. I mean that sincerely.
There you have it. You can't say no.
Same.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, but think of like Last Mohicans era, Daniel Day-Lewis.
He wouldn't have been. I think there's an argument to be made. If I'd been involved in the decision making and someone had said that, I think there's definitely an argument to be made to at least have screen tested him. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Bring him in.
Right?
Yeah.
Bring him in. Bring him into the podcast. Interview him.
God, I would love to get a chance to talk to him for an hour.
He's probably like living in a hut.
Right?
Probably like lives in an igloo or something.
Right? Yeah, I mean, fucking Scorsese found him living in a small chalet or villa in Italy, making boats by hand before Gangs of New York. So, like,
I heard he makes shoes now.
Really? Wow, that doesn't really surprise me.
I heard that on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, if I had to make a list of like the greatest living actors, even if I weren't necessarily sequencing like from best to worst, he would absolutely be on it.
Yeah, he could easily make a top 10.
Right? Yeah.
Let's go into ratings. Jonathan, on any rating scale you want, what would you give Batman Returns?
On a 1 to 10 scale, just because it's, I grew up with it. I've seen it a billion times at least. I would give it an 8 out of 10 for sure. I would watch it time and time again. This one does not get old for me, ever.
Nice. That's high praise. That's a good rating, I'd say. Josh, why don't you go next?
I think I'm gonna go like maybe 6.5, maybe even 7. There are things I very much like about this movie, like some of the direction, the Gothic Winter, which is a recurring Tim Burton thing, but like there's a bunch of silly shit. Catwoman licking herself and shit like that, the 9 lives.
Compare it to the Catwoman movie where she like plays with catnip. I mean,
oh god, I forgot about that.
Ugh, horrible.
I'm gonna go next. I'm gonna give it on a rating scale of 1 to 10, 8.5 programmable Game Gear batarangs. Smartarangs. I really like this movie a lot, and it's visually stunning. I like the stylized old school Tim Burton look of movies, and it's very much in that vein, like the way Edward Scissorhands is. And this one took the first Batman and kind of really like brought it to a whole new level with like the visuals. Like the visuals are more striking. Like the colors are
more of
black
a
and
fairy
white.
tale, yeah.
Definitely. And Gotham seems bigger in this movie than the last movie. And really love that Batman and Catwoman romance. This movie reminds me in a lot of ways of someone that used to be very special to me. And I mean, she probably doesn't listen to the podcast, but if she does, you know who you are. It holds a very special place in my heart, as do a lot of movies from my childhood. This is just one of the many. And as far as Batman movies go, it's one of my favorites. The Dark Knight is an amazing film, so that one might be a little bit better to me, but this one is still great. Steve, on any rating scale you want.
I'm going to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10 batarangs, and I'm going to give this film a score that, seriously, there might be 10 other movies I'm aware of that I would rate this high. Honest to God, I'm going to give this one a 10-10.
Yes.
For me...
Steve's first.
Right,
on the
for
podcast.
my first, yeah, like... You can nitpick whatever parts of it you want. You can point out little foibles here and there, most of which I will probably completely agree with you about. I just don't care. I honestly do not care. This movie...
I respect the shit out of that.
Thank you. Like, this movie is so close to perfect for me, I'm just going to call it perfect. There isn't a single moment of it that I don't enjoy watching, even the parts that are ridiculous. The performances are among the absolute best given in anything that was ever based on a comic or graphic novel. I don't even think it's fair to call this movie a comic book movie. I think it's more like a Batman graphic novel that was committed to film instead of the written page. Like, it's its own work. You can have your own opinions about like what Burton did with characters, but I think the whole thing is brilliant. It's well acted. It's well shot. The costumes are great. The set design's great. The acting is perfect. Every single one of them knew exactly what they were doing and pulled it off perfectly. There wasn't a single performance anywhere in the film that I would pick out as being worse than the others. Like,
even Chip, Dad,
right?
Go.
I mean, definitely nostalgia is part of it for me. I saw this movie the week it came out in theaters. I didn't get to... I was 6 when the first one came out, but I didn't get to see it until months later when it was on VHS and my mom rented it for me. I didn't get to see that one in theaters. This was the first Batman movie I got to see in a movie theater, so for sure that was really formative. But yeah, like, I love this movie. Movie.
I'm quite envious. I'm not passionate about anything like Steve is about this movie.
Right? Like, and certainly there are other totally different movies I feel that much about, and I really love the first 2 Nolan Batman films. There's a lot of good stuff to say about the third one. It's just the one that I have the most issues with. And I would rate those movies close to as high. I'd probably give those movies 8s and 9s, but even those for me aren't as good as this one.
They got the most forgettable Catwoman, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's part of my problem with 3 is that whole... Everything about their approach to Catwoman in that movie actually bothers me, which is the reverse case in this one.
Even though it's the more comic accurate, like...
Yeah, there's as far as the premise of her goes, I'll give you that, and I could have stayed with that. I didn't even mind her being the cat burglar part, but I don't like her. I don't like the way she played that part. I don't like the way they wrote her dialogue. I don't like the personality they gave her. I don't like the fact that they made her such a desperate dipshit that she would just lead Bruce to Bane like that, and then all of a sudden realize that, like, oh wait, what have I done? Like, no, you knew what you were doing.
Bitch,
like,
you knew,
right? Like, and then at the end, like, the fact that Bruce couldn't beat Bane without her riding up and shooting him like that was just like, no, fuck that. The climax needs to be Bruce beating him. Like, anyway, that's a whole separate discussion, but I love this film.
Absolutely. So I think that covers it. Josh, do you want to tell people where to find you? What do you do?
You can find me at Review Inc., Review Incorporated, Review Dude, DOOD, and I make fun of movies. Let's just put it that way.
I love it. That's a good description for what your channel is. Josh's channel is awesome. He does very good movie reviews. They're very funny. I highly recommend checking it out. If you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be a link in the description. So I think that's Batman Returns. That was a long episode. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I want to thank you as the audience for listening. If you want to write in, you can email us at bigdumbmovie@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram, Big Dumb Movie Podcast. And if you're feeling really friendly, leave us a positive rating on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that. Anything else?
The official trailer for this ran with the movie Wayne's World.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we'll leave it at that. Party on, Steve.
Party on, Garth. Oh, I mean Corey, sorry.
Good night.
Face to face, my lovely foe. Mouth to mouth, raining heaven's the past.